Get ready for a very exciting journey that will blow your mind and blow it absolutely. Did you know that DNA is the mother of all subconscious facilities? I repeat, DNA is the mother of all subconscious facilities. And it is far more intelligent, powerful, and programmable than you can possibly imagine. We have all been told that DNA is a bunch of chemicals arranged in a double helix that controls the manufacturing of the body parts. Well, that is true, but it is only 4% of what DNA does. Let me ask you another question. Do you want to hear about the remaining 96% of what DNA does? If you do, put on your seatbelts, because this is going to be one roller coaster of a ride. For you see, DNA is a magnificent mystery. Consider that our scientists tell us that DNA forms our bodies, and our very own scientists tell us that only 4% of DNA has the genetic material needed to form our bodies, and the remaining 96% is labeled as, in quotes, junk. Scientists call it junk DNA. I'm not making this up. Google it. You'll see it. What if I told you that the reason the 96% looks like junk that doesn't do anything is because it is multi-dimensional, it is quantum, and so it cannot be studied with 3D instruments, it cannot be studied in a chemical laboratory? Yes, get ready for a very exciting journey. We are going to go beyond what science can prove today. I can't prove what I'm about to tell you, and so I do ask that you use your own discernment. But even as you do so, keep your mind open, okay? Try not to get too bogged down on the details. Instead, look at the big picture and see the immense possibilities of the human, of you. Okay, are you ready? Well, let's dive right in. What really is DNA? Let's begin afresh. Let's start a whole new relationship with our DNA. Yes, we know what science tells us, that DNA has genes that tell your body what to make, and so on. But that is so cold, so chemical, so robotic, so, I don't know. I need us to fall in love with our DNA. I need us to fall in love with it. Like the way you fall in love with a new puppy, or a kitten, or your kid, or your husband or wife, the first time around, or whatever it is that you fall in love with, man. Because that's where we need to get to if we're to awaken to our full DNA potential. So, really, what is DNA? Well, let's start with what we know. DNA is a replication engine. The idea of life is to reproduce. Well, that's one idea. And DNA does exactly that. DNA is a physical manifestation of the Creator's will to bestow infinitely. DNA is, amongst many things, a life reproduction device of a most ingenious caliber. It reproduces life. DNA is like an architect's blueprint, a set of instructions to create a complex living organism from a single cell, which the single cell itself arises from molecules, water molecules and other molecules that DNA has put together. And if you actually dig even deeper, these molecules arise from the energetic field. Maybe you might not appreciate this, but you're made of 100 trillion single cells. 100 trillion single cells come together to make up your one body. Each cell can have its own life. You can take out a single cell from your body, put it in a laboratory, and put it in another continent, and it will live happily ever after without you. Yet, DNA manages to compile all these 100 trillion cells to bring them together and organize and orchestrate them into a single human being that has a seemingly singular personality. DNA throws a party with 100 trillion cells and makes them all play nice. Perfectly coordinated. Do you have any idea what a marvelous feat this is? And not only does DNA coordinate all these cells to form a single human, it also makes the cells. It manufactures the cells.
Using computer animation based on molecular research, we are now able to see how DNA is actually copied in living cells. You are looking at an assembly line of amazing miniature biochemical machines that are pulling apart the DNA double helix and cranking out a copy of each strand. The DNA to be copied enters the production line from bottom left. The whirling blue molecular machine is called helicase. It spins the DNA as fast as a jet engine as it unwinds the double helix into 2 strands.
Complete picture. A complete picture of you. a picture that changes billions of times per second, but still a whole picture all the time. What I'm trying to say to you is that DNA knows you. DNA knows your body, knows what you need, when you need it, where you need it, how you need it, beyond chemical. You might think that the nerves have something to do with this communication, but they don't. Nerves are too slow for DNA, simply too slow. DNA has near instant communication. Nerves have a delay. In fact, consider a paralyzed person, paralyzed from neck down. They tell us that the spinal cord is severed and that's why the person is paralyzed. Yet, such a person's heart, lungs, digestive systems, and so on still function. They can even get pregnant and that child can grow and be birthed. How can that happen if the spinal cord is severed? Well, it's because of DNA. DNA bypasses the spinal cord if it needs to, and it runs the body if it has to. DNA communicates instantly from head to toe, with no cables, no connections, no nerves with electric currents passing through the nerves from one point to the other, and so on. So how does it do it? Simple. DNA is using pure magnetic induction. Each of the 100 trillion DNA molecules in the body has its own magnetic field. Tiny, tiny little electromagnetic fields. Very tiny. The magnetic fields of DNA overlap, creating inductance. Magnetic inductance is well known in the fields of science. We use it in transformers, electronics, and so many of our technological devices today work through magnetic inductance. Magnetic inductance is what allows DNA to communicate instantly. That is how 100 trillion DNA molecules, each with over 3 billion parts. I'll say that again. You have 100 trillion DNA molecules in your body, and each one of those, each one has 3 billion parts. Do you know how many parts those are? Those are 3 billion times 100 trillion. That's how many parts there are in you that compose your total DNA. Anyways, all these manage to present one singular consciousness of a human being. Communication at the master level with a single plan. Every molecule knows the plan and they all communicate. Furthermore, cells are made of atoms, correct? Well, guess what? At the center of atomic structure is, once again, electromagnetics. At the center of every atom are very, very tiny quantum interdimensional fields, including magnetics. Every atom has magnetics in its core structure. Together, the magnetics of the atoms in your body and the magnetics of DNA form an entire structure that overlaps with information, again via magnetics. And together, it creates a wholeness, love. DNA also communicates with the conscious mind, not through linear language or thoughts, but through emotions and concepts. We will get into this more when we look at the innate, but in a nutshell, DNA knows truth. The mind may be deceived into illusions, but DNA knows truth. It can only give truth. Truth about life, truth about you, truth. And it does communicate this truth. But because it is not a brain, it doesn't do thoughts. Instead, it gives you concepts. You know, like when you just have a feeling about something or about someone, you know, when you just know something instinctively or intuitively, and that wisdom is so wise and true, but you cannot really explain where you got it from. That is DNA communicating. Or maybe you are a musician and some music just comes out of you from some depth somewhere, and that music may be so profound and you didn't learn it in school or learn it anywhere else. It just came from inside you. That is DNA. Concepts, emotions. Your conscious mind then receives these concepts and analyzes the emotions and then breaks that down into thought. That is how DNA communicates to you. Even more amazingly, DNA handles communication beyond the body. It handles multi-dimensional communication of all sorts. with Gaia, with your guides, through the auras of other people, with multi-dimensional entities, and beyond. We'll look at this as we progress. Just hold that thought. DNA is also a multi-dimensional information storage and energy accounting device. This is a big one, and we will only touch on it here and complete describing it in another video episode on Gaia, because DNA is part of a system that exists partly in the human being and partly in the earth. And so you have to consider certain things about the earth, because this can only make complete sense once you do so. But for now, it will suffice to say that DNA is one of the locations where the human Akash is stored. Many people have heard of the Akashic records. Most of those people who have heard of this term, the Akashic records, are likely to have heard it from Eastern spiritual practice and religions. The Akash is a supposed all-pervading field in the ether in which a record of past events is imprinted. In the Bible, they call it the book where all your actions are recorded. In any case, there is indeed an energetic record of absolutely everything that happens in your life. Nothing is wasted. But guess where that record is? Well, one copy of it, your personal copy, is in your DNA. But in the chemical part of it? No, not in the chemical part of it. That record is in the 96% of DNA that science calls junk DNA. It is not a record written in chemical format. No, it cannot possibly be. It is instead a quantum field, information stored in the most efficient format possible. Light. Not the light that comes off our flashlights, no, but a light that is out of the visible range of the human eye. This quantum record holds everything about you. In addition to the blueprint of how your body should be, it also holds your record of your life, every detail of it. And not just this life, but all your incarnations, all your other incarnations, all your past lives and future lives are all recorded in an ever-changing database of light called the Akash, in your DNA. Before we get too excited and get ahead of ourselves, let us consider DNA's composition and structure. Like we said, 4% of DNA is the biological instructions that are used to build our bodies, while 96% of DNA is called junk DNA because scientists haven't yet figured out what it does. This is not my term, it's the scientists who have labeled it junk DNA. Let's start with what is known. The human genome is composed of 23 chromosomes containing a total of 20,000 to 25,000 distinct protein-coded genes, or let's call them heredity units, which are in turn made up of a total of about 3.2 billion nitrogenous base pairs. Each human has a unique genome, and every cell in a human contains that human's genome. That is over 3 billion base pairs per cell, creating enough information in one cell to fill over 1.5 million pages of text. If the human genome was a book, it will contain 23 chapters or 23 chromosomes. Each of those 23 chapters would contain between 48 and 250 million letters without spaces, and hence the book would contain over 3.2 billion letters in total. These 3.2 billion letters would fill 4,000 books of 500 pages each. 4,000 books of 500 pages each. Yet all of that fits into a cell nucleus the size of a pinpoint, and at least one copy of the book, and I do mean all 23 chapters or 23 chromosomes, is contained in most cells in our body. Therefore, the genome occurs about 100 trillion times in a typical human body. The genome is wrapped in a double helix molecule. This molecule is only visible with a high-powered electron microscope. So you can imagine how small its 3 billion component parts are. And get this is the biggest part of this all. Everything we have just described is only 3 to 4% of the full DNA. We've only talked about 4% of DNA. Now, the main function of this part of DNA, this 4%, is to create the proteins that build and run our bodies. It is also estimated that the human body has the ability to generate 2 million different types of proteins, and these are coded only by the 20 to 25,000 genes that we just talked about. The sum of proteins in biological organisms exceeds 10 million, but nobody really has a clear picture of this. We are talking a mind-blowing number here. Now, listen to the best part. Although this intelligent living thing called DNA is the engine for creating and maintaining the human, it is not the boss. It listens to a boss. It has a boss. And guess who it is listening to? It's listening to you. DNA is built to follow human intent. You're not a victim. DNA just doesn't do anything it wants. No. DNA always listens to you, to human intent. Whether you give that intent consciously or subconsciously, DNA doesn't do anything without you. At every moment, it is asking you, hey, boss, what do we do? The same or different? And most of the time, you keep telling it, whether consciously or subconsciously, you keep saying to it the following. You keep telling it, DNA, this is what we do. We're going to do the same. The same. Yeah, the same. Just do the same. Keep repeating what you're doing. And so, you don't notice that you're the boss because you just keep telling DNA, do the same, do the same. You never say, let's do something different. Now, at this stage, let us correct the myth of what DNA looks like. DNA doesn't look like this illustration of the double helix. Not at all. Instead, DNA is a bunch of recursive loops. It clamps around itself in complex ways, like something that wraps around itself recursively. This is what makes it capable of magnetic inductance, because it loops magnetic fields. In technology, magnetic inductance is used in transformers and in communication devices because it allows for amplification of voltage or energy, and it allows for communication without wires, without noise, without loss of power, and without any anomalies in the information. In other words, it doesn't distort the information. Now we dive into the mysterious 96% of DNA that is called junk. It is called junk because we haven't yet understood what it does. It is not encoded like the genome with chemicals that form base pairs, the letters. No, it is built differently. Oh yes, it's there. Scientists can see it. They just don't know what it is or what it does. Well, for now at least, they don't, and so they call it junk. Yet, nature never leaves junk in your body. If you don't use a body part, evolution gets rid of it. You don't use a tail, it's gone. You use it or you lose it. That's how nature works. So, we know that this junk DNA is doing something. Otherwise, it would have been dumped by evolution a long time ago. What is it doing? And why can we not see it or understand it with our current technology? Is it because it is multidimensional and our tools cannot detect multidimensional fields? Before we answer that, let's go to Russia to discover one interesting property of DNA. Maybe that will give us an understanding of what multidimensional forces can do. In Russia, Dr. Vladimir Poponin discovered that there was an invisible field in DNA that is able to organize light waves into coherent patterns. First, he measured the polarization and orientation of light photons in an experimental chamber. As expected, he found that the photons moved around randomly in the chamber. Next, he placed DNA in the chamber and measured the light photons again. To his surprise, the photons had become automatically organized into coherent patterns. He then removed the DNA and measured again. The light photons remained organized, even without the DNA. The field stayed. All this indicated that DNA had an invisible field that strongly organized the space around it. This field cannot be seen with our naked eye, nor with the current technologies that we have. We can only see its results. We have multidimensionality within our very cells. This invisible, multidimensional aspect of DNA is exactly what we will be focusing on here going forward. We will hardly talk about the chemical part that formulates physical bodies. If you want to know more about that, you can always Google it. There's tons of information on that. What we're going to focus on here is the multidimensional aspects. Now, I have to warn you at this stage that going forward, we shall be talking about things that cannot currently be proven in any laboratory on this planet. The instruments to do so haven't yet been invented. Instruments that can work with multidimensional or quantum fields do not yet exist. So I cannot offer you any proof. My research on this topic presented me with what I am about to share with you. Therefore, simply hear it out and see how it sits within you. How do you feel about it? What does your heart tell you? Use your discernment. Let's start with the idea that DNA actually carries the non-physical self. You have a non-physical self, right? Where is it? Is your non-physical self a cloud or a halo that follows you around? Of course not. Could it be your aura? Well, now we are getting closer. But what does the aura have to do with DNA? Now we are really getting warmer, very close. But before we get there, consider the identical twins puzzle. Take a pair of identical twins, born of two Caucasian Swedish working class parents. Both twins look exactly alike. Both twins clearly inherited physical aspects from their ancestors, as do all children. But one twin is a master musician who played with an orchestra by the age of 8. We've all heard of kids that, for some reason, play like master musicians before their 10th birthday. So let's say that one of these twins, before the age of 8, was already a master musician, one of those savants that we read about. You know, we've all heard of these kids. Now, the other twin, the other kid, cannot sing to save his life. Even if that kid had to sing to save his life, that kid doesn't know the beginning, the first thing about music. Again, same twins, one of them has the courage of a warrior, the other one is scared of everything. One loves Indian curry food and all things India and takes to Eastern mysticism like a duck to water. The other cannot stand it and actually hates chilies. Yet, these are identical twins. Where are the non-physical differences coming from? Their parents didn't teach one kid music and war and another fear of spiders and the obsession with India. Where did these differences come from? Right from when the twins were infants, right from birth. And even more complicated, where are these differences stored? They're obviously not stored in the brain. The answer is DNA. Not in the chemical chains, but in the multi-dimensional part of DNA. One kid came out with a memory and mastery of music that was beyond his age because it was in the DNA. The other felt drawn to India like a memory, an innate knowing because it was in the DNA. The DNA connected these kids with something that was beyond their physical and hereditary existence in Sweden, even as infants. The DNA was like a living bridge to bodies of knowledge that were out of sight, beyond space-time as these kids' parents knew it. And this leads us to re-examine what DNA is imbued with at birth. For a start, DNA is imbued with our parents' biology. This is hereditary. We all know how that works. This is chemical. We can use DNA analysis to read the chemical chains that make up the information for creating a body. So that is one thing DNA is imbued with at birth: heredity. Karmic drivers are also installed. Karma is not punishment. That's mythology. Karma instead is, in quotes, unfinished business from other lifetimes of the same soul. Karma is inertia, momentum. Think of it as momentum. Energies that are put into motion continue from one lifetime to the next, seeking resolution. Such resolution comes by way of understanding, polarity integration. otherwise known as forgiveness. Forgiveness is what stops this momentum, this inertia. Forgiveness is what stops karma. By forgiveness, I mean that which is brought about by a profound realization of a truth, which then liberates you from the illusion of separation and damage in that particular area. And you genuinely see that you can forgive because there is nothing really to forgive. That's what I mean by forgiveness. I don't mean just saying, I'm sorry. So, karma is a system, a driver that drives the entity towards the point of genuine forgiveness, whether it occurs in one lifetime or across several lifetimes. It is a driver that drives an entity towards polarity integration. It causes the experience of events that act as a catalyst to that required forgiveness. Karma bridges time in that way. And so, in this way, karma is an ancient driver of evolution. It is a system by which evolution was driven forward. But it is an old and very, very slow system of evolution. We are progressively leaving the age of karma and moving into a faster evolutionary driver. We are beginning to drop karma. Now, in DNA, karma is not stored chemically. No, this is stored informationally. The Akashic records are installed too. This too is informational, not chemical. The entire record of all the lifetimes of your soul, not only on this planet but also beyond it, in your entire galactic lineage, all that is stored in your DNA. And you can access this information should you choose to. DNA was designed to be mined. You can mine your DNA and retrieve any aspect that you require. It is like a massive kingdom of treasures held in storage, released and used if and when required. But we will get to that later. Your higher self is also installed in your DNA. I am sure you've heard it said many times that, in quotes, God is within you. That God is inside of you, and that the kingdom of God is inside of you, that you are God, and so on. Well, this is a literal statement. It's not a figure of speech. It is literal. Your DNA has divinity. It recognizes divinity, and it seeks divinity. Human beings, even as children, somehow seek their creator. They all seek divinity in one way or another. They seek the mystical. You just wake up some days and you're just like, I want to know. I want to know where I come from. What's all this about? Is there a God? What's my relationship to that? That is something that is held within your DNA. And human beings are the mystical, the divine, the creator that they literally seek. Literally, your divinity, your higher self, is also an attribute of your DNA. That is why we say that DNA is an entity, an event. DNA is not just a bunch of chemical. In fact, the chemicals make up only a small portion of it. DNA is an entity and an event. The higher self is built into DNA not as chemicals, not as information, but as divinity itself. Your astrological imprint is also installed at birth. This is informational too, and it is quite literally an electromagnetic snapshot of the solar and cosmic system at the time of your birth. How does this work, and why does it happen? Well, the planets and the stars, like all things, contain information. Each body has a unique vibration, giving it a unique attitude and informational capabilities. Remember, information can be transmitted and stored using electromagnetic fields. Now, the push-pull of the planets and stars creates multi-dimensional patterning at the core of our sun. Obviously, the planets and the stars are all moving about, so this pattern is always changing. This pattern is transmitted to the Earth, to Gaia, through electromagnetic inductance between the solar wind and the Earth's magnetic field, placing the sun's quantum magnetic field within the Earth's magnetic grid. That, by the way, is also what creates the northern lights, the ones that we call the aurora borealis. That is what creates it, this interplay of those magnetic fields. Anyways, the solar wind affects the Earth's magnetics in many, many ways, including changing the vast quantities of information held in the Earth's magnetic field. The Earth's magnetic field subsequently patterns and shapes your DNA's magnetic field through the action of magnetic inductance. At the time of your birth, the heavenly bodies were in a unique configuration that will never happen again, because the whole system is moving through different regions of the Milky Way as the galaxy rotates, whereby one rotation takes approximately 250 million years. And so, the energy configuration at the time of your birth in or around the place where you were born is unique to you. And this is so especially because of the location of your birth. I mean, many people could have been born at the same time as you were, but only you were born in your location at that time. This means that although many children can be born at the exact same time, they cannot be born at the exact same time and the exact same place, and therefore that is another unique imprint. That is another component of your unique personality. The time and place is unique to you. Even twins, even identical twins, cannot be born at the exact same time and place. There is always a variation somewhere, even if it is measured in minutes and inches. These differences in time and place are therefore also differences in information. Your informational composition is therefore unique. This system is one of the main systems that a soul uses when planning an incarnation, so as to pattern and predispose a lifetime towards a certain direction. The more you look at DNA and consider everything it is capable of, the more you realize it is quantum. It is multidimensional. It is not just a bunch of chemicals. The bulk of it is quantum, multidimensional. As Cryon says, DNA is the crossroads of God and man, the mixture of the quantum and the non-quantum. It is a place where physics meets spirituality, and a place where complete peace and solace of consciousness are achieved. The bridge to the Creator's reality is there, and in each DNA molecule there is a mini portal that leads to a multi-dimensional universe. DNA is in so-called layers or helixes that are mixed up like a quantum soup. Science has recently started to get a tiny glimpse into it, and it has to be quantum. When you consider the bigger picture of what DNA does, you realize it simply has to be quantum. There's no other way around it. Sure, DNA forms your physical body, but that is a tiny, tiny aspect of its purpose. Think big, zoom out, span millions of years of time and space. Think galactic, think universally. And then you really start to see what DNA is really all about. You cannot understand DNA if you keep thinking human and thinking that it is just unique to the human or just unique to the animals or creatures of this earth. You have to really think big. And you have to really think in terms of billions of years and in terms of the universe. And then you'll start to see what DNA really is all about. DNA keeps a complete cosmic database of the entity, of the soul, one that goes beyond simple heredity. It contains a multi-dimensional record of all that is and all that ever was in this universe and beyond for that particular soul or that particular entity. Even in identical twins, only 4% is identical. The rest is unique to an individual. A record and potential of all that individual has experienced in human and non-human form, on earth and beyond. It is also a portal of connection with spirit, and this guarantees a connection that never ever stops. And it is much, much more, as we will see. Another interesting thing about DNA is that DNA is universal by design. You will find DNA in life forms across the universe, not just on Earth. Different DNA, for sure, yes, but still, it's DNA. DNA is the basis of a model that creates life forms that are aware. And so DNA is written in a language that all life forms can read. As you will soon see, DNA did not start on Earth. It was brought here. At least that is what all my research is pointing to. Scientists now agree that informational structures are not built from chemical processes, meaning that DNA was intelligently designed by some kind of intelligence. It could not possibly have evolved naturally from heat and chemical reactions and that kind of thing. And from this common root, at least the root that was brought here to Earth, millions and millions of species sprung up. On Earth, we estimate roughly 30 to 40 million species, each species being a practical proven answer to the question of existence, survival, and even of how to thrive. 40 million answers to the question, how do I survive, or how do I thrive? 40 million different answers that work. And if that much life variety can be found on this one tiny infant planet that is so young compared to the rest of the universe, what about how much life can be found in the unfathomable vastness of our ancient universe and beyond? This chart, for example, shows how all the plant and animal life on Earth is connected by DNA. You literally share portions of your DNA with dogs, cats, rats, birds, fish, worms, fungus, trees, bacteria, and so on. DNA connects it all. And here is another chart showing how a common DNA root produced all the life forms on Earth. Are you starting to get the picture here? DNA is more than just a bunch of chemicals. There is a divine, intelligent plan within it. There is also something else that is strange about human DNA. Chromosome 2 in the human DNA is fused deliberately. Chromosome 2 is one of the 23 pairs of chromosomes in humans. Also, people normally have 2 copies of this chromosome in each cell. Chromosome 2 is the second largest human chromosome, spanning more than 242 million base pairs and representing almost 8% of the total DNA in cells. All members of hominids have 24 pairs of chromosomes. The great apes also have 24 chromosomes. Strangely though, humans have only 23 pairs of chromosomes, unlike all their relatives and their ancestors. Human chromosome 2 is widely accepted by the scientific community to be the result of an end-to-end fusion of 2 ancestral chromosomes. Now, the question is, who performed such a fusion? This is beyond normal mutation of genes. We all understand what mutation is, but we're not talking about mutation here. We're talking about fusion. This is quite literally, quite practically, for all practical intents and purposes, a genetic manipulation. Let us understand what we find on human chromosome 2. The evidence that human chromosome 2 is a fusion of 2 of the common ancestors' chromosomes is overwhelming. Humans have 1 fewer chromosome pair in their cells than apes or even than their human fossil ancestors, the hominids, due to the fact that 2 chromosomes were fused into 1. This, when you understand, is completely baffling. Who performed the fusion? It is such a deliberate and high-tech thing to do that it blows the mind. Now, let's look at the 12 layers of DNA and why junk DNA still perplexes scientists. When I was researching this, I was looking for a framework that describes this mystery in the best way possible. You know, the mystery of the junk DNA. Considering the fact that this is way beyond where our scientists have managed to reach. Therefore, I couldn't go to the sciences. I had to leave the sciences. Now, the best framework I found was by Cryon, channeled by Lee Carroll. And so, going forward, that is the framework we shall rely on. Under this framework, DNA is explained as if it were made of 12 layers. But this is a metaphor. And we need metaphors because we are about to talk of quantum things, not linear things. Linear things can be counted. Quantum things cannot be counted. And so we are trying to separate the inseparable, so we may understand it. So when we talk of layers or groups, take this as a figure of speech. In reality, DNA is like a quantum soup that is multidimensional and uncountable, and all the layers blend into each other and synergistically work as one. You cannot really separate the layers any more than you can separate the ingredients contained in a hot bowl of soup. That said, DNA has 12 layers. These 12 layers are divided into 4 groups. Each group contains 3 layers. We have the grounding layers, the human divine layers, the Pleiadian Lemurian or the cosmic layers, and the divine creator layers. The grounding layers include the biological layer, the life lesson layer, and the ascension and activation layer. The biological layer contains the 4% of DNA that is currently visible and understandable to humans using an electron microscope. This is what is actually referred to as a human genome. It also has a multi-dimensional component that acts as a sort of messenger between the other layers and the physical body itself. This messenger converts multi-dimensional energy into 3D information and action. In other words, this 4% is mostly the biological engine, and a small portion of it is the, in quotes, antenna to the quantum multi-dimensional aspect that directs the biological engine into action. The chemicals don't make decisions by themselves. They are instructed into action. They are instructed into action by a multi-dimensional part that is not chemical. The life lesson layer contains the drivers that drive you to experientially answer the questions: who am I? Why am I here? What did I come to accomplish or learn or remember? And for what? This is not karma. Karma is about group dynamics, which means the group around you, your karmic group, and your place in that group. Karma is about the emotional energies developed from that unfinished business with your karmic group. Karma is a test of energies that you might call lessons or puzzles to solve. For example, karma might involve a person always getting abusive partners until they understand themselves differently and thus solve the puzzle, and then that karma ends. That person no longer attracts abusive relationships. Karma is always about interaction with other people. Karma is about relationships. Here are some more examples of karma. You can get a military family, a family of healers and doctors, a family of business titans, a tribe that does things in such and such a way, someone driven to keep finding irresponsible partners, someone who keeps being taken advantage of by others, someone who keeps oppressing others, and other such group dynamics. Karma runs across lifetimes, and it is an intricate part of the system of time. However, it is a very slow and ancient process of evolving over lifetimes. It literally pushes you into a groove of what you believe you are supposed to be involved in. And this makes you consider why things work and learn from those experiences. Solving karma has been the primary way humanity has evolved to date. It has been the energy generator of this planet's vibration. But times are a-changing. You can now opt out of karma if you choose to, if you intend to wholly, but you cannot opt out of a life lesson. You can never opt out of a life lesson. You can opt out of karma, but you can never ever get out of a life lesson. Life lessons are part of the individual core energy of your soul, which is to say they are not part of group energy like karma is. Karma is group, life lesson is soul. Life lessons are 100% about the individual, about you with you. Once a life lesson is learned, its wisdom is permanently stored across lifetimes and never has to be repeated. Some examples of life lessons that can be learned include learning to love, learning to listen, learning to receive, learning to love yourself, learning to speak your truth, learning not to be a victim, learning not to let other people define you, learning to feel your own mastery, learning to move out of your duality, learning to stop blaming others, learning to take care of yourself more than others, learning to love your own company and be comfortable alone, learning to know that you are worthy, that you deserve to be here and to live well, to know that you are not dirty or broken, and so on. Life lessons are constructed due to your Akashic record, which means your current life lessons are connected to your past lives. Whatever the past lives have generated as a puzzle for them becomes a life lesson to you now. That's a generalization, but that's pretty much roughly how it works. Life lessons are always solved when the human discovers balance between the two polarities. Polarity integration. Without balance, enlightenment is impossible. Balance is not compromise. It's not the same thing as compromise. In fact, balance has nothing to do with compromise. Balance is transcendental. Balance transcends and embraces the polarities. And by the way, the feeling of purpose and direction in one's life comes from this layer, the life purpose layer. The ascension and activation layer. Consider the masters in our history, people like Buddha, Jesus, Krishna, and even the modern day ones. They had legendary abilities. For example, they had miraculous healing abilities or even miraculous actions. But did they have special DNA? I mean, was their DNA different from all the other people? I really can't tell you, but let me propose this. They had same DNA as you and I, except that their DNA was activated, and mine and yours may not be as highly activated as theirs was. So I propose to you that Jesus had the same DNA as everyone else, except his DNA was highly activated. And whereas most people are at 30% activation only, his DNA might have been at 80% activation, for example. I am trying to suggest to you that you are exactly the same as the most miraculous person you might admire. Pick anybody. In fact, pick the most miraculous person that you admire ever since the beginning of time. Pick that person. It could be anybody. It could be Jesus, Buddha, anyone that you want to pick. Whoever you pick, you have the exact same potential that they had. You have the exact same latent powers. The same powers that they had, you have them in you. But the only difference is, in you, they are switched off, whereas in that person that you really look up to, they were switched on. So we're not talking about differences in people. We're now talking only about switching on, switching off of DNA activation. We all talk of enlightenment, ascension, awakening, but consider that these are not brain-based or heart-based only, Sure, they involve the brain, of course, they involve the heart. Ascension, enlightenment, awakening, they involve the brain and the heart, of course. But I'm trying to suggest here that they are actually primarily DNA-based. Okay, here is a different question. Which of these two is a better, more efficient evolution model to you? Which sounds better? Think about it. What if you are a creator God? Let's assume you're like God, okay? And you're designing creatures. Which of these two models would you choose? Model number one, you create a creature with minimal capabilities, and over time, you keep adding to those capabilities randomly, One day you add this, one day you add another something, and over time, that creates evolution. Or let's try model number two. You create a creature with a full range of capabilities, from the most basic to the ultimate end that is part of your grand plan. The ultimate end with the most amazing divine powers that you are able to implant in a creature. But then what you do is, you switch most of them off. At the start, you just turn on just the bare basic ones. Okay? And then you allow that creature to activate them as that creature progresses in consciousness, such that evolution then becomes simply a gradual switching on of latent abilities. Even as a creature invents new aspects that you hadn't placed there, the bulk of evolution is about that creature turning on what is already there. So, model 1 and model number 2, which makes more sense to you if you are a creator God? Now, the ascension layer handles ascension. It handles moving into an enlightened and activated lifetime without physically dying. It assists with spiritual awakening, activation, activating DNA to do what consciousness requires it to do as consciousness grows. For example, it may activate DNA as the consciousness learns to conquer fear. And it may activate that DNA, so that DNA enables that entity that has learned to conquer fear and move into love. It enables that entity to find balance, to change perspective, to discover new paradigms, to increase the power of that entity's or that creature's cellular structure and beingness, such as to provide the blueprints for miraculous healing that comes along with shifting from fear to love, or to allow that species to live longer, and so on. And because of this layer is a catalyst for the other layers, as you can imagine. The human divine layers include the angelic name layers and the higher self layers. The angelic name layers. Now, the name is not singular like the name David or Alice. Instead, it is a symphony, a song that is an energetic composition made up of the grander you, an energy that includes your human aspect today. All your lifetimes in the Akash, and each and every single experience in all those lifetimes, and the rest of you on the other side of the veil, all those combined form your angelic name. This name represents the essence of your soul. It is a quantum name. This is the name stored in the Akash and in the cave of creation, a name that captures your entire divinity. This name is family. This name is bigger than we can imagine. Therefore, the name in the DNA is more like a pointer to the actual name held in an interdimensional library. The higher self layer. When you feel the creator within you, in those moments when you feel you are connected to divinity, what you're feeling is the higher self in your DNA, in every single cell. Your higher self is not separate from you, it is you. It is called higher not because it is better or higher in stature than you are, but because it vibrates at a much higher frequency. The frequency of light and unconditional love, the frequency of divinity. It is simply you at a higher frequency, the frequency of the Creator. God is within is a literal statement. God is you. You are source energy. That is a sacred reason you are here playing this game. That is the purpose. To play the game. That is your infinite worth. This layer is your connection to the other side of the veil, to all the other parts of you beyond 3D. It is your connection to home. This is the I am layer. Another name for the higher self is the Holy Spirit. This is what you tap into when you meditate or pray. It is therefore the communication layer to your own divinity, the other side of the veil. Ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. This part can literally change your life. This is the part that sees you as wholly worthy, equal in worth to any other entity in this entire universe, equal in worth to any other part of universal divinity and beyond. Loving yourself is a key to having conscious awareness of your divinity. But as we know, humans have a serious self-worth issue. They don't want to believe they are worthy of being divine. How could that be? How can we be divine with all those insignificant problems that we seem to face? Humans prefer to think of themselves as little, insignificant selves. At least compared to the Creator, they prefer to think of themselves as completely insignificant and separate, nothing like the Creator could ever be. They prefer to see God as something separate and far, far more intelligent and far more superior, far more capable and far more worthy of love than they are. That is why one of the most important life lessons for us to learn is to love ourselves fully and unconditionally so that we can experience the acceptance of our position in divinity. Now, because it connects you with all of divinity, this is also called the prayer and communication layer. In wrapping up, consider that your higher self is present in all of the following places. Number 1, it is present in this lifetime that you're living. Number 2, it is present in all your past lives and your future lives. Number 3, it is in your record in Gaia's grids, meaning in and on the earth itself. Number 4, it is on the other side of the veil, beyond this three-dimensional life. Same higher self in all those places at the same time. That is the power you have access to if you choose. Now listen carefully. Your higher self is you in higher density, beyond the restrictions of space-time, which, turning back, is offering its services to itself, to you, in lower density. I'll say that again. Your higher self is you in higher density, beyond the restrictions of space-time, which, when turning back, is offering its services to itself, to you, in lower density, in 3D. The Pleiadian Lemurian or cosmic layers include the revealed divinity layer, the master Akashic record layer, which is also called the wisdom and responsibility layer, and the multi-dimensional healing layer. The revealed divinity layer. Have you noticed how almost all creation stories or religions on earth always start with humans at an advanced level that is in direct communication with God or with the gods, and then there is some sort of fall in consciousness, and that explains how we got here. Just about every creation story of every tribe, of every race, always starts with very divine humans that then fall. Have you noticed that? There's almost no creation story on this planet, whichever tribe you look at, there's almost none, at least none that I know of, that begins with a caveman that then evolves into humans as we know today. All of them begins with humans being very advanced spiritually, literally talking directly with the gods or the god, whichever, and then the humans fall. There are literally over 10,000 creation stories out there, one for each tribe or group of peoples and so on. And as far as I know, almost all of them have this exact same template. Some kind of ancestry that was in direct communication with the gods and then fell. Well, I suggest to you that this template is prevalent in the collective consciousness of humanity because of one small thing, that it is based on a truth. It is based on something similar that did actually happen. And now I'll give you the version that my research has turned up. This story is actually the Pleiadian story, the Lemurian story, the story of our origins. Let us make man in our own image and likeness. Now, what I am about to say may sound absolutely mad for many people, and with good reason. And to be honest, when I first heard about it during my research, it sounded rather incredible to me too. But the more I found out, the more it made sense. And so I ask that you entertain the possibility that what you're about to hear could be true, maybe. At least maintain that possibility, maintain it at least until you've watched all the other video episodes in this course, especially the video episodes on the history of the earth, the galaxy, and the universe, and of the creator. Watch those videos first before you come to a conclusion. Okay, once you've watched all those other videos, then this story that I'm about to give you will make much better sense, and at that point you can then make up your own mind as to how crazy this all sounds. Anyways, for now we are simply going to state the premise as it is, or let us call it the theory or the hypothesis for now. And as we go along, we shall try to find evidence later on in other videos once we start talking about humankind's place in the galactic and universal scheme. And so here it is, the premise stated as follows. The Pleiadians seeded humanity on Earth. Humanity did not originate on Earth, it was seeded here from elsewhere. I will read the premise or hypothesis to you again. The Pleiadians seeded humanity on Earth. Humanity did not originate on Earth, it was seeded here from elsewhere. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? I will try to bring you as much evidence as I possibly can in later videos, but in this particular video, we are focusing on DNA. In this video, I will only mention that the Pleiades is a well-known open cluster of stars in the constellation Taurus. As we shall see in this video and in subsequent videos in this course, the Pleiades are mentioned in the Bible several times. They are also mentioned in current and ancient tribes, mythologies, and in civilizations all over the world, ancient civilizations, running from the Americas to Africa to Eurasia to the Pacific Islands and to Australasia. No other star system is mentioned as much as the Pleiades is in the creation stories or the spiritual stories of many of Earth's tribes, religions, and ancient civilizations.
Our DNA has information in it, and there is a whole field of scientific study called information science, which studies how information originates, how it's transmitted, and so on. And one of the laws of information science says that information never originates by itself in matter, never spontaneously comes about. Anytime we trace the copying of information back to its source, it always comes back to a mind. And since we have creative information in DNA, that tells me that DNA comes from intelligence. It's not something that could possibly come about through millions of years of mutations and natural selection.
DNA. DNA is a very powerful, massive information storage system. In fact, DNA that makes up our genes actually is like books of information that's read by a language system. It's absolutely phenomenal. And scientists know today that languages, a code, only come from an intelligence, and information only comes from information. Nobody's ever seen matter by itself give rise to a code. Nobody's ever seen matter by itself give rise to information. And as you look at DNA, it actually cries out, meaning God created the universe.
We all begin as a single cell the size of a period at the end of a sentence. How does that cell know how to build a body with 100 trillion cells in it, thousands of different kinds, and each one of them is so complex, nanochemical machinery beyond our comprehension how it works, and encoded is the instruction manual. It's the manufacturer's manual how to build and operate every part of this incredible body made up of 100 trillion cells.
Further,
Again, let us review what we have said about the human soul. The soul is not part of that which is corporeal, and yet it resides in you at a corporeal level. But it's not. It's not chemistry. It's not synapse. It's not intuition. It's not any of the things you studied. It is something you can't understand. It's a piece of the Creator. The creative source which created all that is, long ago, created a beautiful, benevolent system, and it needed a universe to accomplish it, and galaxies, and planets, and life. And all of those were put together and accomplished correctly, properly, and not accidentally. The creative source that built the planets around you, the galaxy that you circle, is inside you. And it hides. It hides because it's part of the test on the planet for you to discover with free choice if it's there. To make it hide even more, there's only a certain percentage of it you can handle, so you're not aware of it. You're not aware of its grandness or what it is actually, but you are aware of it intuitively. Humanity knows God. As far back as you can look at your history, human, you came onto the planet and you looked for the Creator. Because it's inside. And then it happened. The Pleiadians came. I'll tell you about them in a way I've never, ever told you. The human soul permeates everything about you. It is not locatable. It is pure, multidimensional energy that is sacred and beyond anything you can ever measure. It's not in a scale that you have ever seen. You don't have a word for it. You don't have colors for it. It's too far above any sense that any human will ever have to identify. And it loves you because you're family. Closest thing is love. And that's what you feel. You can't explain that. You can't explain your soul. You can't explain the Creator. But you know it's there. It has no gender. It's generic and beautiful and filled with splendor. And it's inside everyone. Dear one, it's inside me. I am not a human. It's inside me. I speak to you from a position of honor and gratitude. I've never been a human. I can't believe what you go through. Astonishing to me that you would have signed up for this. And the soul is right there. Is the soul part of your DNA? Yes, of course. I've identified the layers it resides in. But that's not all. It's in every chemical in your body. It resides in the energy of your consciousness in ways you don't know. It's accessible in ways you don't know. And it loves you beyond measure. I cannot tell you what it is because you don't have the concepts to understand it. But if you could think for a moment of the most beautiful colors you've ever seen, that would be it. The most benevolent force you've ever felt, that would be it. The most love you've ever had for anyone or from anyone, that would be it. It surpasses anything you've ever experienced on the planet, that'd be it. And the Pleiadians gave it to you a long time ago. I want to tell you about them. After I tell you about you, dear ones, this is difficult, and this is a review of one thing we've discussed, and we're going to go further than this. The things I give you today will sound outlandish, beyond weird and strange to many. We're prepared for that. But many of you have to know it. I'm talking to old souls, both listeners and in person. Not all, but most. Most. I want to tell you who you are. If I haven't given you this information before in this way, you need to hear it now. When humanity was ready to be seeded by the Pleiadians, you simply were part of the animals on the planet, designed to be at the evolutionary stage you were. You were way beyond that with cavemen. You were ready. You look like you do now. You act like you do now. And you were ready. And it wasn't that long ago. You want to paint the picture of 200,000 years? And 100,000 of them were just getting it so you only had one kind of human instead of 14 or 15, like all the other animals. Now here's the question. When it was time to build Lemuria, and the seeding took place as it did, who do you think was here to receive the seeds? Just regular humans that have come up through the evolutionary process? Just another animal? And the answer is no. It was you. And you came from the Pleiades. I want to tell you something. When it comes to reincarnation, it's not limited to this planet. You were aware of that, were you not? You have to come from somewhere. When you have an exponential growth of humanity, where do you think the pool comes from? Other places. Life does not then emerge from nowhere. What if I told you there's a set amount of entities and soul groups that incarnate? And it's been happening for millions of years, other places, long before 200,000 years ago. You came from the Pleiadians. You agreed to drop that which you had evolved to, come back into a form that was basic, and receive the seeds because you had to be of a certain kind of chemical readiness, soul remembrance, all the things you've never heard had to be correct for the seeds to take. For the meld of the DNA, the chromosomes to move around, for you to become who you are. This is the creation story. So let's put it in simple terms. Adam and Eve were special. They were you. Having come fresh from another place, ready to receive the knowledge of light and dark. It wasn't random. That's who you were. You're not just old souls. You're very special old souls. You've come from the Pleiades. It's a system you wouldn't believe. You came from everything to almost nothing, and you did it because you saw the potential of today. How many lifetimes have you lived the last couple 100,000 years? Huh? What have you been through to get to today? Well, I want to tell you where it's going and the potential of where it can go. And I want to paint some time frames for you, and I don't want to scare you with how long it's going to be. But I want to show you the potentials of what you can be. And this is where it gets odd. When I say Pleiadian, who do you think about? What do you picture? Humanoid forms that are perhaps taller and very wise, that will come here, not necessarily in vehicles, but they come here, that would come here instantly. What might that tell you about what they've got and you don't? So now I want to paint a picture. Pleiadians, the 7 sisters, made up of 9 sons. 3 habitable planets, all habitable by Pleiadians, eventually, have been a society of enlightened humanoids for 2 million years. You got 200,000. 100 of it really counts toward Lemuria. 50,000 really is where it began. Really. Almost all the rest of it was just getting ready. And I just told you that the Pleiadians have been at it for 2 million years. You're looking at a society that is 8 times longer than you. 8 times. They went through what you did almost to the T. They grew up and matured just the way you did. They had a time frame for them too. They went into graduate status like you are now, and everything changed for them. 2 million years. A portion of that, about 10,000, were spent killing each other. Sound familiar? Killing each other. They were in the playground of maturity, casting stones, calling names without any maturity, in the dark. The same issues you had, they had. They passed the marker. And they began to receive information. And I'll get there. Believe me. Tonight. I'll tell you. But I want to tell you about them. Their DNA is like yours. You probably knew that. You're going to find it all over the galaxy. DNA is DNA. And the principles which created it here have created it everywhere. It is the building block of life, period. And you're going to see it someday when you find life in other places in this solar system. It's going to have DNA. You're going to start understanding its natural occurring life process everywhere. 2 million years. Their DNA started to become more viable, like yours. 44, 54, 55, 66, 77. 88. Let me tell you what happens at 88. You start to meld with the soul. You're designed to be divine. Did you know that? I want to tell you something. You're designed to live forever. Renewable. Every cell keeps going and going, especially the divine in you. When it starts balancing up the cellular structures, it creates new ones. It goes to the blueprint. It never gets old. You never get old. Brian, what are you going to do with overpopulation when you never get old? Let me give you a hint. The Pleiadians have 3 planets. Does that give you something? You learn to move around. You learn about the universe. It's not an issue. It's not a problem. It's beautiful. A Pleiadian is the closest thing you'll ever see to an angel in your life. They're working at 88%. They have control over physics. They're entangled with anything they want to be. The human soul is divine physics at its maximum. Control over everything. The Creator is in the soul. The Creator is the master physicist of the universe. If you are at 88% of that, you got control over everything. That's the seed that you have inside. What is their society like, you might ask? There is no society. They're way past that. There is only the togetherness of love. Closest thing to an angel you'll ever see. 88% of the creative source over 2 million years. The Pleiadians were seeded by others. We've talked about Orion and Arcturus. They become your grandparents. There's one before those you've never even heard of. They took 1 million years or more. You do understand, do you not? in a planet that's over 4 billion years old. You're the new kid on the block here. You're really new. Imagine what was going on in your galaxy. Do you know how long 1 billion years is? Imagine what went on. This is the only planet of free choice in the galaxy at this moment. Dear ones, you're it. And you just passed a marker, and all the life in this galaxy that has divine DNA knows about you. The signal was sent. I want to tell you what that does. That brings celebration, hope, visitors, and help. The system begins. All of this talk about soul, and here's why. I want to tell you about the system. My partner has spent the day talking to you about evolution. Spiritual evolution within the cellular structure of your body creates a symbiotic relationship with your DNA, your Akash, intuition, all of these things, and he never really talked about the soul because we haven't given him this yet. The system of spiritual evolution comes through the soul, period. Doesn't come through the pineal. The pineal senses the higher self. Intuition senses the higher self, but the soul is the one who delivers the information. The soul is connected to the grids. Your human soul is the catalyst, and always was, for the graduation energy that you are now ready to receive. It does not come in through the human portion. It cannot. The time capsules that are opening, that the Pleiadians have armed, if I may use the word, armed, literally ready to go off in your direction to give you information, is going to go to the soul part of you. And the soul part of you is only engageable as you approach 44. Spiritual evolution is going to be an increase in soul awareness. Now, here's something we've never talked about that you are starting to feel. We're going to call it this. We're going to call it soul remembrance. Your Akash is only from Earth. Let me tell you something about that. We gave you information a long time ago what happens to your Akashic remembrance when you pass over the veil. It stays here. It's in the cave of creation, in a crystalline substance, you might say, that remembers everything. It's like you have your own crystal and it stays on the planet, and when your soul comes back, it picks up the information, puts it in your DNA, and off you go. It stays here. So let me ask you, why are some of you remembering who you were on another planet? I know who's here, you see? Some of you are remembering Pleiadians. Some of you are remembering that you went through this before. It's giving you hope because you know where it went. You got to see 88%. And that's why you're here, because the chance of that happening here, you're not going to miss it. Who knows how long it's going to take? It doesn't matter because you're going to be here the whole time. %. Soul remembrance is what we're going to call soul Akash. It remembers past Earth. And this is starting to happen. With the evolutionary process of that which is taking place on this planet with old souls, in is going to come soul remembrance. You're going to remember your eternal. Who were you 5 million years ago? You were not Pleiadian. that is going to occur to you as well. You want to know, you want to really know where your souls are coming from? All the planets of free choice that have graduated. They're not coming from the sky in some well from the creative source. They're coming from other places who have gone through this, dear ones. That's who you are. But the ones in the room and the ones listening, you wouldn't be here and you wouldn't be listening unless you had a certain attribute of soul remembrance that is already at work. Not what you've done on the planet, but what you did in the Pleiadians. In the Seven Sisters, you went through this. You graduated, and you spent a long time going that direction, closer and closer to the divine source. It's so attractive, dear ones, to come to a place where you're one with God. You've been there. You've done that. And you were the first on the planet to receive the seed. And now you awaken and you remember a little of what it was like, just a little. You struggle with the conflicts of being a human and also knowing where you can go and what you can do. Frustration. Sometimes chemical imbalance. In the last 2 years, many have died. Maybe they've been friends of yours. You weren't ready for it. Maybe they've been partners. I want to tell you something if you haven't heard it before. They're back. They can't stay away that long. They had to leave then in order to pave the way for your return, dear one, because of what happened in 2012. Scheduled to leave early to pave the way for you coming back. There is a system here which is beyond benevolence. There is a system here which reeks with the greatest love of the creative source you can imagine. Dripping with it. Waiting for you to become one with God. The room is filled with pictures of holy men and women. Many of them on other continents who have found the connection that brings them to a wholeness where they can keep themselves alive for a long time, be one with the planet, meld in consciousness with nature and all that is. In an older energy, this was always possible, but it took discipline and it changed their lives forever. Some of them could not eat the things they used to eat. Many of them became celibate. All of these things in order to create this precious energy that for a moment would give them the solace of feeling the Creator. And I want to tell you, dear ones, they were the forerunners for what's coming. This is your future. With free choice, you can turn it around if you wish, but you're not going to. You can go slow if you wish, but you're not going to. And I know this because of what has happened in the past. You see, peace is addictive. Love is addictive. Benevolence of spirit and compassion is addictive. You know how I know? Let's talk about the Master that the season is about today. Perhaps you saw pictures of the Christ and you saw the animals gathered at his feet. That was accurate. The animals saw the 88 to 90% in him, and they were attracted to it. It's addictive, you see. People gathered from all over just to sit at his feet and watch him glow, because it was addictive. The entourage he had around himself was palatable. And you could feel it in the arms of God. And you sat in front of him and all was well with you for those moments. And if you spent a little too long, he might feed you while you were there. And all of that was real. The celebration, is it not, for an addictive energy of love, of compassion. And that is where you're going. But beyond that, as you increase the percentage of efficiency of your DNA, your soul brings in more of the creative energy from the source. That's the evolvement of a human spirit. Way beyond biology. Way beyond consciousness. You handshake with the source that created the universe. I complete this story of the soul. That's where it's headed. That's why we teach it. Now you know. You might want to review the words. How long will it take? Too long. This is just the beginning. You're in year 2, dear ones. In year 2. And there's such a celebration that you made it. You will start to see humans mature in spirit. We've said it over and over. The things that are so out of balance today in humanism will start to be balanced and mature. You'll see it everywhere. In every aspect you can think about, even politics. Balance, compassion, wisdom. You'll start to see it. When you come in next time, you're going to remember who you are. That's my promise. You're going to pick up where you left off. You will be a wise old child beyond any children you know today, old soul. And you're not going to make the mistakes you did this time around. None of them. It comes in with you more than Akash soul remembrance will keep you safe. And your children will carry what you carry. That's the way it's going to work. That's what's going to propel it forward. Past peace on earth to graduation into soul energy. Too esoteric for you? It's okay. I've got time. Check in with me in about 1,000,000 years. And so it is.
Let's proceed. Now, the first humanoid civilization on Earth was called Lemuria, some 35,000 years ago in the current islands of Hawaii. At the time, Hawaii was the highest mountain on Earth, and any geologist will tell you this by studying the ocean floor and so on. Lemuria was the original modern human civilization, the first one on Earth. The myth of Atlantis is heavily modeled after Lemuria, the original island that sank, inhabited by advanced beings. But Atlantis came about much, much later. Lemuria lasted as a civilization for 20,000 years before it submerged 15,000 years ago, and its inhabitants spread to the Pacific Islands and New Zealand and many other places. To this day, these cultures still have references to the Pleiades star system. Lemurians were not technologically advanced, but their DNA was highly activated, much highly activated compared to its activation levels of today's human population. As such, they had superior advanced knowledge of the cosmos, the universe, the body, Gaia, Earth, and nature, which they got as direct knowing from their activated DNA, as all beings with activated DNA do. And they lived very, very long. Even in the Bible, there is a period of time when people lived for hundreds of years. All over the earth, there are accounts of people living hundreds of years as a normal lifetime. Nothing special. 500 years, 900 years, Yes, humans. You see, the problem with us today is that we look at the last 3,000 years and we assume that life has always been like this and will always be like this. Well, look, buddy, things change. Now, Lemuria was established to set the stage for what was to come, for what we are now, today. Those initial lives were what was used to establish the initial Akash of the earth and to see the energy of the souls that would come to earth in the cave of creation, which we shall look at in detail in the Gaia video episode. Now, Lemuria did not just appear. No, it took a long time for humanity to be ready, meaning the Pleiadians had to genetically evolve a humanoid here on earth into what we now call Homo sapiens. And if you're familiar with human evolution, you will recall that scientists are baffled as to how Homo sapiens came to be. They say there is a missing link. They say that an older ancient ancestor to man was ape-like, yeah, sure, and suddenly, bam, it evolved into Homo sapiens. And they can see the trail of evolution. They can see that. They can see the ancient caveman, and they can see how that kept evolving. But there is a missing link. There's a jump there. There's a time where that ancient ape-like caveman creature, in a very short amount of time, an amount of time that is just unreasonable to scientists, it just jumped and became Homo sapiens. And this is what scientists refer to as the missing link. This missing link is the Pleiadian involvement. And that involvement took around 100,000 years to seed the ancient ape-like ancestor and modify it and awaken it into Homo sapiens. Everything we now call spiritual was seeded into Homo sapiens over time, over roughly 100,000 years. Once all was ready, the Lemurian civilization was seeded and cultivated. And once it matured enough, the peoples were spread, the island buried, and humanity started life proper on earth with free will and as little interference as possible. Consider the fact that there is life everywhere in the universe. Everywhere. Nowadays, even NASA acknowledges this, as can be seen by their recent press releases. There is three-dimensional life, meaning physical life as we know it, and then there is also multi-dimensional life, the kind of life that we cannot see with our eyes. But only a fraction of life has creator energy within it. The human has creator energy in them, but the gorillas and the monkeys don't have creator energy in them. Okay? And you know what I'm talking about. Humans have something special compared to all the other animals that we see around. That's what I'm talking about when I say creator energy. Creator energy was implanted there. It did not just happen by pure chemical evolutionary chance. This is the layer that makes the human conscious of light and dark, of duality, of polarity, or in very crude terms, of good and evil. And this layer sets up the stage for the polarity integration game that this universe is playing, this galaxy is playing, and therefore you and this planet are playing. And the end goal of which is the realization and embodiment of unconditional love, polarity integration. But we shall look at this game in more detail at a later video episode. And now we come to the Master Akashic Record, or the Wisdom and Responsibility layer. Let us first ask, what is the Akash? The Akash of the human being is a multi-dimensional history of everything the human being has experienced on earth from the beginning. But it is not just an inactive record of history. It's not like a history book that doesn't do anything but keep an account. Not at all. It is active. The Akash also drives our lives to a great extent. But it doesn't drive us in the way we expect, meaning it doesn't give us thoughts to act on. The Akash is not in our brain or in our synapse. It is in our DNA. Therefore, it is not linear and it cannot be remembered as a normal memory you might have of what you did yesterday. It is multidimensional, and so it communicates to your consciousness in a different way. through concepts of existence. For example, many of your fears, your dramas, your feelings of guilt, and your major life patterns are concepts communicated to you from the Akash. The parts of the Akash that drive us the most are the parts we have the strongest emotional connection to, both what we love and what we hate. The Akash deals in concepts, not memories. The good news is the Akashic drivers instantly change when you choose to change. For example, when you choose love instead of fear, the Akashic drivers change to support the new choice. The Akash is a quantum record and driver, meaning it is like a soup that changes tastes all the time as humanity changes intent. For example, the understanding of a past life event in the record changes as the present life understands the same issue differently. It is like a grand painting that is always changing yet always complete. Now, this is important. The Akash is actually a Gaia attribute. Gaia stores the Akash of all humanity on earth collectively, but an individual human has his personal record in their DNA. Thus, specifically, the Akash in the DNA is more like a pointer to the actual record held in an interdimensional library in Gaia. Your Akash belongs to Gaia, and even after you leave this planet, the record remains in Gaia. The record of your lifetime, of all your lifetimes, and of all the lifetimes of all the souls that have ever and will ever incarnate on earth. To explain this in a different way, here is a quote from Seth. I quote, "There are presently invisible layers within the body, the topmost layer that you see representing, of course, the present physical form. But enmeshed within this there are what amount to invisible layers, shadow, latent layers that represent previous physical images that have belonged to the personality. They are kept in abeyance, so to speak. They are connected electromagnetically to the atomic structure of the present body. To your way of thinking, they would be unfocused. They are a part of your psychic heritage, however. Often, you can call up a past strength of a previous body to help compensate for a present weakness. The body does not only carry memory biologically of its own past condition in this life, therefore, but indelibly within it, even physically, are the memories of the other bodies that the personality has formed in previous reincarnations." End quote. Okay, what does the Akash include? First, it includes your galactic ancestry. Here is the thing, you are eternal. Yes, each of your physical incarnations on earth has had a beginning and an end, a birth and a death. Yes, we know that. But you, who you really are, is eternal. You go on forever, 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 in many, many forms. Before this universe was created, you already were. You are the family of God and always have been, always were. And you came to earth for a purpose that actually has to do with the universe itself and the new future energies you will create from your experience here that will set the ascended vibrational tone for the next universe. And so you do have a pre-earth experience. You are your own ancestors. It is a complex, wonderful system. Try not to think like a human about this and you will see the possibilities. Next, your Akash includes your past lives here on earth. Every lifetime in every gender. Everything you have ever learned, been, experienced or accomplished in every lifetime is recorded. It is a treasure chest like no other, and it is yours. You can use whatever you need from it. Now, I'm sure you've heard of people remembering past lives, whether through hypnotic regression or naturally, as many children naturally do before the age of 5 to 8 years. When past life recollection occurs, it is the Akash that is being accessed. But the Akash can give you access to more than past life memory. It can give you access to all the powers, talents, capabilities, skills, states of health, and so on of any lifetime, past or future, within your personal Akash. Memory is the least of what it can do. Next, it includes your karma. Karma, we say again, is not punishment of past bad actions. It is not punishment. Karma is simply a driver of rememberings of things past, both positive and negative. It is like sensing the past, even past lives, and getting an emotional reaction to that and either repeating it, staying away from it, or resolving it. It is part of the energetic puzzles that we solve. Let's clear up one misunderstanding. Humans are not predestined to do anything on earth. There is no predetermined path for you. Instead, by default, humans are predisposed to follow a karmic path that they do simply because it's there and they came into the planet with the emotional equipment to follow it automatically. Every human who is born into this planet immediately gets a karmic imprint. When you come into this planet, karmic energy is deposited into your DNA and you start the energy there. Karmic energy is an energy that is part of the system that is Earth's life force, Gaia. As Cryon says, often humans are born into a place or situation where they left off the last time. It's the most natural thing for them to do, and it's an easy decision. This path often takes them into challenge because of what has happened in lives that happened before. Often it will redo and undo itself as karmic energy unfolds. Many of the energies of the yin and the yang are then manifested, and that is all part of a very old system under a very old spiritual vibration, one that is automatic, but it doesn't have to be yours. You have the ability to get out of the groove of karma. You can take that old karma and place it aside and replace it with something far higher in energy, an energy with intended spiritual direction for you and the planet. You would say, I wish to make my own creation, my own reality, and not the old setup of karma I came in with, and it will be done for you. Okay, so karma drives most of the emotional reactions we have on a daily basis, and it is the reason you incarnate in touch with your karmic group. For example, it is usually the reason why you and your parents selected each other. Karma primarily carries old energy, such as fears, dramas, and unfinished business. It is on by default, but you can drop it, and you can drive using new energy such as love and compassion. Finally, the Akash also includes your biology. How is that so? Well, as you develop in the womb, your body and its organs are created according to templates. These templates have evolved over eons of time, way before humanity started on this planet. And the system remembers what worked best for the eyes, what worked best for gathering food, for mating, for thinking, and so on. The system therefore chooses the best templates based on the current life plan, the karmic drivers, and other potentials of that incarnation, and puts together an appropriate version of the human for that incarnation. Can you see how this all works like a quantum supercomputer? Consciousness has physics. It isn't random or voodoo. There are very specific processes at play here. Intelligent design. Now, the Akash also pushes the creature beyond just survival. Otherwise, evolution would have stopped a long time ago at the level where survival had been accomplished. We would have stopped evolving a long time ago. Think about it. Is space travel part of survival? Going to the moon is not part of survival. The Akash drives us beyond survival, beyond what the other animals are content with. The lion is happy just, slapping a buffalo and having that as a meal and doing the same thing the next day. We go beyond that. The system pushes further and further beyond survival and into self-actualization and even into the search for God and the universe. The Akash literally is a driver. Now, what does the Akash drive? The Akash drives our lives every day, yet most of us are not even conscious it is there. It is a system that drives humans into situations of learning and situations of solution, to work the energetic tests, the energetic puzzles, and to contribute their love and understanding to the planet through their lives. It drives the events of your life, the particular challenges you face, your fears, your dramas, your habits, your emotional blocks, the potentials for growth from all those challenges, your wisdom, your solutions, peace, compassion, love, and even your individuality is driven by the Akash, and that is why identical twins can be so different as people, even though they are biologically identical. Now, in the Akash, some attributes are, for the lack of a better phrase, closer to the surface than others. This means that some things are easily part of a person's personality, whereas others are latent, dormant. The Akash contains the potentials of what can be realized, based on the choices being made now, in real time. In this way, the potentials of who you will meet and everything you have a chance to be and do are known even before you are born, because quantum energy is all about probabilities. And that is how life plans and soul contracts are made pre-birth, before you're born. You pick your parents and they pick you. The synchronicities are known beforehand. But this is not the same thing as predestination, for you are always at free will to accept or reject anything once you get here. Once you're born, you can totally change the plan if you like. No contracts have to be honored. You can choose to cancel them or honor them or change them. Free will. For you did not come here to suffer. You came here to test energies and solve energetic puzzles of life, and in that way advance evolution beyond what it has ever been. Ever. And so you see that by design, the Akash has a huge role in synchronicity, so-called coincidences, and in luck, and of course in intuition. But this system is quantum. That is why when you ask on something, you shouldn't insist on a particular way and time and place that it should come. Simply ask and let go. The system itself knows best. So ask and say, this or something better. Almost all the time, the system knows a way that you don't, that is a far, far better way of delivering that which you asked for. Intuition, then, is a system's way of communicating the probabilities to your consciousness. Intuition is not only looking at the probabilities, it is also fetching wisdom from all the other thousands of lifetimes that you have experienced. Intuition is your communication channel into the multidimensional system that includes Akash. Intuition works hand in hand with something called the innate. The innate is your smart body. Your body itself, because it is connected to DNA and thus the universe and all of time, is an amazingly wise vehicle. We simply don't listen to it, but it is far wiser than the brain itself. Let me quickly explain what the innate is with a simple example. Have you heard of kinesiology or muscle testing? It is amazing. Using kinesiology, you can ask your body a question and it answers by tightening or loosening your muscles. You can, for example, take a substance that you have never seen or heard of before and ask the body if it is safe to eat. Muscle test for the answer and your body will always give you an accurate answer. It just knows. When you muscle test, which is what kinesiology is all about, you're actually asking the innate. The innate knows. Innate is DNA talking. It knows. Or have you ever been somewhere and for some reason your body just gave you a bad feeling, like some bad vibes, and you knew you had better leave immediately for your own safety? Has that ever happened to you? Or have you ever met someone and gotten bad vibes or maybe even good vibes of that person, and you knew instantly whether you should trust them or not? That was innate talking. The innate usually communicates using emotional concepts, intuition, and synchronicity itself. It brings you coincidences that lead you places. Now, at our current 30% DNA activation levels, we aren't consciously connected to innate. One system of this is obvious. When we watch our infants, our children are born almost useless for survival, whereas animal kids are born ready or very soon ready for survival. And even as adults, we don't even know when we are sick until we get a medical examination. Yet the innate already knows. So how on earth is it that our bodies can be sick and our innate knows very clearly that it is? and it knows the cause and the solution for the disease, but our conscious mind has no clue and has to go to a doctor for a medical checkup. How is it that our kids are born almost useless? They don't even know fire burns. How does that doesn't make sense, does it? Does that sound like the way the system was built to work, or does it sound like a broken system? It sounds more like a broken system, right? Well, the more DNA is activated, the more consciously connected with our innate that we become. A child born at, say, 40% DNA activation is born smart. They remember other lifetimes and all that they knew in those other lifetimes, and they can sense what is in their DNA database. They try to walk much earlier. That's true. There's some kids right now, the parents are like, I can't believe how much earlier they try to walk, you know. And they do that because they remember it. They learn to speak much earlier because they remember it. And intuitively, they know advanced things, and they have great wisdom at a very tender age. That is an example of DNA activation. Now that you see how vast the treasures of the Akash are, you can appreciate that the Akash was designed to be mined. The kingdom really is within you, literally. The Akash was designed to be mined. In the hundreds or thousands of lives that your higher self has lived and is living, you have experienced almost everything a human can experience. Think of past lives not as linear sequential lives, but as a grand painting that is always changing, with each life forming a color or a pattern within that painting. This includes future lives, by the way. Each of those lives is to some extent colored by the others, and each of those lives can elect to tap into the others out of free will. Through all those lifetimes, you have earned all that, the wisdom, the talents, the abilities, the health, the power, and so much more. You can, at any time, with pure intent and belief and entitlement, knowing it is your rightful inheritance, you can ask your higher self, or even your body itself, to go into your cache and fetch any attribute that you desire. All you need is to love yourself and to know you are worth it, and it is absolutely possible. Ask and you shall receive. You don't need to know how it all works. Your DNA is listening, and it will do it. It knows. It will take the appropriate time to manifest your request, but it will do it. You are your only limit. You have a universe of resources, but if you don't command them, they just lie there, dormant. They require your honest intent, your word, and they activate to the extent that you believe and allow. DNA knows. It is not your job to tell it the how to. Your job is simply to place the request, the intent. DNA always responds to overall intent, and by overall I mean your subconscious beliefs are included. This is one of the most powerful tools that a human has once he or she begins to use it. Like everything else, it grows with practice. Through pure intent, you can mine your Akash. You can ask for any attribute from your past lives to be activated in this life. You can ask your DNA to bring spiritual wisdom immediately, gathered from past lives when you had shamanic energy and spiritual wisdom, and much more. You can ask for perfect health from lifetimes when you are in perfect health. You can ask for any skill from the many that you must have mastered in the thousands of lives your soul has lived. Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened. It is quantum. Ask believing and act on it, and you will start to notice changes. Your only impediment is doubt and fear. The answers are within. Whenever you need anything, to the extent that you believe, your Akash will fetch it. Your intuition is what connects you with it. Intuition is how the Akash tells you what it needs to tell you. And synchronicity is how the Akash, with collaboration of the whole universe, brings you the experiences that you need. You can mine the past as well as the future, because all lives are in the now. Let me give you examples of the Akash in action so that you can see how it is mined. Consider child prodigies who could play music or paint art like a master, yet they do it at a tender young age. Or children who can remember past lives vividly. Or people who are savants, or people who have synthesia, and so on. All these seemingly magical abilities are simply the Akash in action. Another example is when you meet people who have a seeming addiction to poverty or to poor health or to persecution of some kind, an addiction that is very difficult to shake off. Even if someone is abundant and rich in this lifetime, but they have had poverty in other lifetimes, then despite their millions today, they may still have a deep fear of losing money, and their lives can still be run by this fear of losing money. You know, they can be misers, perpetually stressed and worried about money, even if they might be millionaires. You see, you cannot delete what is in the Akash. You can only change your understanding, your perspective, and therefore your reaction to it, to the point where you have a peace that surpasses all understanding. The past is the past. You cannot delete the memory, but you can reprogram your reaction to the memory or to the energy of it. You can ask your body to bring you a better awareness and understanding and peace about those memories or energies and your fears, and it will do so. Simply don't resist. Instead, flow, and you will find that your body will do that for you. Now, as we end this topic on mining the Akash, one last thing to mention. In all those thousands of past lives, there was one thing in common with all of them: the same higher self. Your higher self was present in all those lifetimes, and it is present now in this lifetime, and it is at your service. Never ever forget that. Never forget that. You have a friend who was always there, is always there, and is everywhere. Use the Akash. It is one of the most powerful tools you have at your disposal. That is why it was created, so that you can use it. Use it, mine it, fall in love with yourself, and ask for anything you desire, and that love will ensure that it is given unto you. As Seth says, you must remember that beginnings and endings are realities only within your own system of three-dimensional life. The energy of your being exists outside of your system, however, and impinges upon it in your terms, becoming alive physically at certain points of time and space. Your own greater energy dips in and out of the space-time continuum as you understand it. As it does, its experience becomes physical. Within that system, then, it leaves a life trace. When you think in terms of reincarnation, it seems that one tracing exists before the other, but the entire chart of tracings exists all at once, with all the individual life tracings all at once. Since these offshoots or life tracings each come from your entity, your soul, they are connected psychologically and in terms of electromagnetic energy patterns. End quote. And so, as you can see, the Akash is very much tied to our evolution. The Akash is intricate to evolution. If humans decide the planet should go forwards in light, the Akash behaves differently. If humans decide the planet should go backwards into darkness, the Akash behaves differently. Imagine a time when all children will be born at, for example, say 50% DNA efficiency instead of the current 30%. They would naturally be aware of unity consciousness, also known as Christ consciousness. Imagine a Palestinian, an Israeli, and an American nation with children of unity consciousness. Suddenly, war will seem completely ridiculous. They won't even think of it. Where would these children have got unity consciousness from? They did not learn it from their biological parents. All they saw from their parents was hatred and distrust of the other nations. Well, these children would have got that concept of unity consciousness from their celestial ancestors. Unity consciousness is in their DNA because of their ancestry. The Pleiadian ancestry of ascendance and of an ascended society is in their DNA. The pattern and concept of it is in the DNA because of that heredity. The galactic Akash brings new things to Earth that were not developed here, and in turn, Earth makes new versions of the same and new consciousnesses altogether, and all this adds to the richness of the galactic Akash. Have you heard the common New Age saying that there is really nothing to learn, only to remember? Well, this is it. DNA activation and the remembrance that comes with it. You have been alive for eons. You are eternal. You created and worked with advanced concepts way before Earth even was. And now, once again, here you are. And with you is all you have learned and earned from the beginning of time.
The human race is about to shift into a wiser kind of energy. But wisdom takes many forms. It is not necessarily just in your consciousness. Let me present something that we broached last night in a smaller meeting and that we have been talking all around for many years. Your body, your cellular structure, even that which you would call your intellect, your thinking, all of that is somewhat restricted. It's restricted by the fact that the body engine, which you would call DNA, is only working at about a third of the efficiency that it's possible to work at. The body engine is designed in a way that you would have vastly longer lifespans than you currently do. The DNA that you have, the intellect which you could have, the connection to the other side of the veil which you could have, depends upon an efficiency that is greater than you have. And that is what you are broaching. You are moving into a greater efficiency. Don't look at numbers, that you would have a certain percentage here or there. We give you these things to make it clear to you. But when you deal with multidimensional energies, you cannot use linear terms. The evolution of the human being, all of you, not just old souls, is going to target itself in the efficiency of your DNA. The old souls will be the first ones to see it and use it. That means you, as the teachers, will then teach it to the others who are not able to see it and use it as easily as you are. Therefore, the old souls, not an elite group, are simply the older group. The ones who have a greater understanding and wisdom now on what to do with it. You can see it. The younger ones, and I speak now of younger souls, the ones on the planet who have not had the lifetime experience you have, the younger souls will see that you have something that they don't. Some of them will reject you because of that, and others will want to have what you have. More and more will see the older souls, the wisdom, the improvements, and want them. Eventually, your task will be to bring them online with what you know. Dear ones, I want to weep with that statement alone. Finally, a world where civilization begins to grow up, where there becomes a demarcation with the elders based upon the number of lifetimes you live instead of the years that you've been on the earth. Old soul elders can be 20 years old. And there will be those at their feet because you see their wisdom, not the wrinkles on their face. Where the discernment will come from a whole different place in your brain than it does now. And you will know who they are. So some will be elders on the planet, some will be young people on the planet, and there will be no generation gap between them when they have a simultaneous, synchronized wisdom. One of the things that I want to tell you about tonight that is such a difference in the evolution of humanity will be what is going to happen with your bodies. I want to review with you for a moment what a body is like operating at approximately a third of its potential. In your life right now, so many things are what we would say an issue within you. It's almost like your body does things to you. It doesn't. It does things apart from you because you do not have a bridge between your conscious thought and your cellular structure's actions. In the physical, you'll catch diseases. You won't know about it. There'll be all manner of things that you fight all your life called health. What is good for you? What is not good for you? Are you eating things that have been genetically altered? What will that do? How will it affect you? All of those things will correct themselves, dear ones, with a body that starts to evolve so that it knows consciously and cellularly what's going on. You will have discernment of food. You'll walk into the store, you'll feel its vibration and reject it or accept it. Do you have any idea what this will do to the manufacturer's sales? When human beings simply stop buying things because their intuition says don't buy them, that will have an effect, a very 3D effect. This ripples all the way through the manufacturing energy, attributes, plans. Just imagine. That's human evolution. What about the other things we have told you about that are inefficient in your body? You cannot control them or affect them. You just have to deal with them. That is going to start to change. We have told you that your intuition is going to sharpen. You will start to see the connections between brain, heart, and intuitive sense. You'll start realizing the system of the body is so much larger than science has told you. This is not the fault science. Science does its best to give you the best it can in knowledge of how things work biologically. Doctors and nurses, trained in the very best that they know. But dear ones, what I'm telling you is that they don't know what they don't know, and it's not their fault. As human beings begin to advance and develop, the things that they will have first is the wisdom that you would continue to really conceive as consciousness change, ascension processing. I want to get ready for you to understand the cells of the body are going to start changing. Last night we told you about cellular awareness. It is all part of this. But there's one big one we haven't told you about. Some of you are bothered by something you cannot control. It's beautiful, old soul, that you have an Akash that remembers. But when you have a body working at 33%, you cannot control what it gives you. And sometimes what it gives you is past life trauma. Where was the last time you were killed, and how did it affect you this time? No control. You go to sleep, you'll have dreams. Sometimes they're exceptionally disturbing. They may be recurring. You want to know where they're coming from. It's the energy from the Akash. It's the last lifetime or the one before, a short lifetime where something happened. It stays with you. It sticks with you. You can't control it. You'll go to a past life reader whose gifts are there on purpose for a reason to help humanity. And if the past life reader is one who has a gift which is accurate, they'll be able to help you to see it and dismiss it. You will then be able to rewrite what happened in the past. Some of the best healing methods of this planet, we told you a week ago, are not chemical-based. No longer. They're energy-based. And the energy we speak of mostly is the energy of knowledge, wisdom, and consciousness. When you can discover something and know something, you can correct it, you can reprogram it. This day you learned about tapping, you learned about decoding a little, you learned literally about body talk. You talk to your cellular structure, it helps you by talking back, you learn things, you heal yourselves, and on you go. Some of you are distressed because you know the truth and you can't get to it. You know about how you can change that which is in you, which you want to change, but you just can't get to it. If that's you here today, I'll tell you that's why you're here today, because I have news for you. You came at the right time, at the right place. I'll give you a promise. You are getting to it because you ask for it, because this energy will support that. Stop fighting it. Stop trying to figure it out and say an affirmation, dear God, thank you for the connection you gave me today, for it's going to be different from now on. I'm in control. That's your evolution. The fact that you are asking for it generates an energy of solution. The very acknowledgement of the knowledge that you can do it creates an action. Body awareness. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to do it. You just have to acknowledge that it's there. Pause with me for a moment, even before I give you some news I've never given you before, and celebrate the power of the old soul, the beauty of synchronicity that would put you in a group like this to listen to a family member give you a fireside talk about the good news. No matter what is before you on the planet socially, no matter what your news says, everything starts with you. It doesn't start from the big to the little. It starts from the little to the big. One at a time, the human beings will change. The result will be grander wisdom, acceptance or non-acceptance of foods, policies, attitudes, everything. And as it starts to happen worldwide, and it will, eventually, you'll turn on the news, and it won't be what it is today. You're impatient. I tell you new energy is coming, you're turning on the news and say, I don't see it. Not understanding, you guide it by what you do today, not what your television set does. Your changes today will affect others tomorrow. That will affect others tomorrow, and another tomorrow. The planet changes slowly. Sociologists will tell you there have only been 4 changes since humanity began in what you do. That's how slow it is to them. And they study human behavior in groups. Do not take this message as saying it's going to take a long, long time. There is an acceleration of change. That's part of what your recalibration is. Back to the Akash. What have you been through? Old soul, I will tell you a truth. What have you been through? Everything. You name it. And you've been through it. Anything. Because the human experience includes so many things, especially in an old energy, where you did not have some of the comforts today you have, of health, of curing, of understanding, of knowledge, of knowing. Now, we told you in the past that human beings tend to reincarnate in what is called Akashic groups. You used to call them karmic groups. We're dismissing karmic energy. The old soul doesn't need it anymore. We'll call it Akashic groups. You tend to reincarnate in the same places and in the same families for a certain amount of time, and then you may move on. What causes you to live in a small town in Canada? Now, not all of you do, and I know who's here. I'm speaking to the locals. Why? How many of you feel you were pioneers here? Go back even further. How many of you worked the land as the ancients here? And if you were one of those, I would like to remind you something I said last night. How many children did you lose? As common things that the pioneers had. What was your reaction to it? Does it appear, old soul, in your dreams? You see, the old soul is beginning to awaken and become more sensitive, and here's the good news for you. We know about this. The body knows about this. You are broaching a multidimensional barrier of wisdom acknowledgement. The body is becoming smarter, and in the process, it's going to give you greater mental health. And the way it's going to do it is by giving you the power, not automatically, the power to choose a new word, Akashic filtering. You can control the Akash that comes to you. Now, what does it mean? If you have an inappropriate remembrance that is affecting your life, all you have to do is acknowledge it with your body and say, we do not wish to have that remembrance, for it is affecting us in this lifetime. Your body, your innate, your cellular structure, all is you. It's not another entity. Your Akash is not somewhere else, somebody else pushing a button for you. But at 30% or 33%, it feels like it, doesn't it? You can't control your dreams. You can't control the energies. Some of the habits you have are coming from your past life. Some of the things that you are reacting to today is because you have unfinished business in the past. None of that is appropriate for an old soul who is advancing in wisdom. You don't need to be bothered anymore. That's good news. Do you see what I'm saying? You have control, and the beginning of it, over your Akashic filters. Now, some of you will still have dreams, and you'll say, when can I get rid of those? That's coming from your subconscious, dear ones. That's your duality trying to get to you. That is your choice, and always has been. You have the knowledge of dark and light, and which one you choose and which one you work with doesn't have anything to do with your Akash. But there is so much that you are based upon who you were. I'm telling you, you're going to be able to clean up your act. When you get rid of the inappropriate things that are coming to you from past lives. Akashic filtering. Oh, Kryon, how do I do it? Where do I go? Where do I start? And the answer is yes. Number one, it always is, do you believe it? Number two, if you believe it, you can change it. It becomes cognized as your reality. Then you start working with it. The same way you mine your Akash, you use Akashic filtering. You start speaking to your own body as though it were a friend, because it is, working better than it ever has before, because it is, more aware, because it is, cells that are listening, because they are. Your Akash is a multidimensional part of your own DNA. Build your affirmations and say them when you want to. And the affirmations are you speaking to you. And you can just say it, Dear Akash, I now have the power through wisdom and ascension over what bothers us and what does not. Use the word us, not you, not them. We are now going to filter our Akash. Give me the things that I need to know, and dismiss the things that I don't. Instead of a steady series of uncontrollable thoughts and feelings and energies that come at you and disturb you in ways that shape your life, you now have control. Now, just like everything else, it's new. You may not know how to work with it right away. Some of you are able, some of you are not able, because your paths are unique. There are old souls in this room who will walk out of there different and apply this instantly and have results. And there are others of you who are coming online, very old souls, but just learning the process, the feelings, the belief. And it will take longer. Don't beat yourself up if you don't get instant results. Oh, how human of you. Give it time. The wisdom of the ancients all had something in common. They looked at time differently. Didn't have any of the modern things you have today. If they wanted to communicate to a friend in another part of the country, they would write a note in their own way, and they'd get a reply in several months. What a system. And they loved it. They understood that quality takes time. This is the ancients. It's in you too. For you are your own ancients. Is it not time to not just filter your Akash, but perhaps even do something proactive? Call upon the things that you need to know that stood out because they were positive, because they saved your lives, because they gave you peace and comfort, and they were of God. This is the message for this evening. Spiritual ascension and wisdom is just beginning on the planet. The old souls get it first. They teach the others. It is the beginning. It will take some time. But this is the first time we gave you this information. Waiting for this group. Waiting for this time and this place. Think of it. Things are not always as you believe they are. We weep with joy that you've reached this point where finally we can start giving you some seeds of truth that are going to make a difference in your life. go from this place changed. And so it is.
The next layer is layer 9, the multi-dimensional healing layer. Now, this is not the same as the white blood cells or the body's chemical immune system. The body's immune system is chemical, it is 3D, and it works great at 3D level. We refer here instead to something else different, entirely different, something multi-dimensional, something quantum. It is not chemical. It is the innate knowing of the body. It just knows what is right, what is perfect, and how to get there. It knows what is happening and why, and it knows it far, far better than the brain can ever hope to know it. This is like a living blueprint of perfection of the being, coupled with innate awareness of the being. It responds to multi-dimensional energy and not to linearity. For example, it responds to human consciousness and intent, to love, to prayer, to meditation, to faith and belief, to positive or negative thinking, to energy work, such as Reiki and acupuncture and so on, and even to multi-dimensional energy healing machines that are yet to be invented. One day we're going to have them. This means that it will not do anything at all. It will just sit there dormant until it gets appropriate instructions from the human consciousness, or from the energy machines of the future, or even from energy work, such as Reiki or acupuncture. It also means that the body is always listening to you and responding to your intent and acting on it, regardless of whether it is positive or negative intent. And so this explains psychosomatic illnesses. This system, by the way, is not bound by linearity or chemical rules. This system can change the magnetics of cellular structure, which can in turn produce amazing, miraculous results instantly. Spontaneous remission, what we call miracle healing that happens in an instant, is actually driven by this layer. Now, let's take a quick detour. We just said that this system can even change the magnetics of cellular structure and cause instant changes. How does that work? Well, magnetics are the cradle of human consciousness, as we shall see in other video episodes and we have seen in the past. Magnetics are also at the core of atomic structure. Magnetics are also at the core of DNA communication. Magnetics are at the core of mass and gravity, and magnetics are multi-dimensional. Hence, changing the magnetics is far, far more powerful than changing chemistry. If you didn't understand the system, you would call it a miracle, or maybe even voodoo. But when you start to understand it, you realize that it is simply the manipulation of multi-dimensional physics. Okay, back to the healing layer. Now, the body, scientifically speaking, is designed to live for thousands and thousands of years. One lifetime can go for thousands and thousands of years. The body is capable of doing it. Its regeneration capacity is proven. In fact, it is infinite. Yet, we experience aging and short lifespans. Why? First, don't you sometimes wonder how come our body doesn't tell us when we get disease, like cancer and so on, or even just, normal diseases that we don't feel until it's a bit late? The self-diagnostic system seems to not be working. We have to go to a doctor to find out what's wrong with us, and we have to have lab tests and all that sort of stuff. Don't you think that's odd? That sounds like a terrible immune system. However, it is because the knowing part is currently switched off. Only the chemical part is on, and chemicals don't know. Once activated, the innate will let you know right away of any harm approaching, and so on. You would know exactly what your condition is, why it is that way, and what you need to do so as to resolve it. And you wouldn't need to go to any doctor or get any tests for that knowing to come by you. When DNA is inactive, the body simply follows the cycles of life. It also accumulates stress and toxins, and when it comes to regeneration, it regenerates its cells by making copies of old and sick cells instead of making brand new original copies. By the way, do you know that the body keeps regenerating itself, and the body that you had 2 years ago is completely different from the body that you have today? And what I mean by that is all the cells that you had in your body 2 years ago, all of them are dead. None of them are still alive. The cells that you have today are absolutely different from the cells you had 2 years ago. The eye, the human eye, has the shortest regeneration cycle. It regenerates roughly every 3 weeks, meaning that the eye you have today has absolutely different cells from the eye that you had a month ago. So the body is always regenerating. The problem is it's regenerating by making copies of old and sick cells. It has the ability to make copies of brand new originals, but it's not. And therefore, because it's not, this results in rapid aging and death. With DNA activated, however, it is capable of healing. But also, even more amazing, it is capable of regenerating by making brand new original cells instead of copies of old sick cells. This is the key to it living for thousands of years. To be more precise, this layer does not directly heal the body. This layer heals the Akash. It heals the Akash. That is why this layer is so powerful. That's what this layer is for. It is for healing the Akash. Very powerful material, isn't that? And from there, this changes DNA as a whole. And then this changes the body as a whole automatically. Once you heal the Akash, you change DNA and you change the body. Remember, DNA is informational. Information is what ultimately drives chemistry and physics, or physicality. Once the information changes, everything changes. And so, in conclusion, we have two healing systems. The 3D chemical one that we know as the body's immune system, and the healing layer in the DNA, which is the multidimensional system. The healing layer sits there dormant until you speak to it, because it needs multidimensional energy to activate it. For this to be, you have to honor and respect your body, and you have to know and acknowledge that your body isn't just a piece of dumb meat. It is instead a divinely designed vessel that is alive and conscious and wise beyond belief. And then you have to consciously develop the skill and the relationship of talking with your body and, cultivate that relationship just like you would with your friend or lover. You must speak to it. You must speak with your body daily and develop a loving relationship to the point whereby you literally are in love with yourself. Do you remember how it feels like to be in love with someone else? At least the first few weeks. Now, imagine having that same full-on love feeling towards your body. Imagine that. Imagine feeling like that, like you just freshly met your body and you're totally in love with her or it. In that state, you will ask for anything and your body will do it for you, just like a lover does. Along with a 3D chemical immune system, this multidimensional aspect completes the system that knows how to heal itself, how to live long, how to regenerate, and so on. Currently, our bodies are replacing old cells with new cells that are new copies of the old sick cells that are being replaced, hence aging. The system is built to make originals from the prime blueprint that is pure, the way it was designed originally, without effects of aging and disease. Now, we look at the divine creator layers. These particular layers are not processes or records like the other layers. Instead, these are just beingness layers. They just are. They are like the cradle upon which the rest sits and is made possible by. They are like the background color or the primer color that an artist first paints across the whole canvas before she starts to paint the picture itself. They are the base upon which all the rest lies, so they don't do anything. But without them, there can be nothing else. The divine belief layer. This represents the call to divinity, the recognition of God in you, the understanding of your own divinity. This layer is responsible for the nagging feeling humans have, the feeling or the drive to find God. It is as if something is missing, a search for home, a search for answers. 80% of the planet is actively seeking a God or believes that there is a God of some kind. And this layer is the engine for that. It is activated especially through compassion. It is the background that allows for all the other things to have meaning, on the tiniest to the grandest scale, all as one. When activated, even ordinary things take on a grand new meaning. For example, death is understood differently. Simple acts of kindness are understood differently. Good and bad are understood differently, with compassion and non-judgment. Even sweeping the streets or cleaning a toilet takes on a new meaning. It can be activated anywhere, in any circumstances, by anyone, in any religion, in a good or bad situation, even in the worst of disasters, by the worst of people. It doesn't judge, and any and all paths to it are accepted. Once activated, it vastly assists the human being who has welcomed it. Vastly. You cannot imagine how life changes when you activate this layer, when you start having a relationship with this layer. This layer responds to pure intent and compassion, and not academic or logic tests or inquiries. It respects free will 100%, and it will do absolutely nothing unless it is summoned, given permission, and asked to be involved with true, genuine intent. And once summoned, it will assist, but it will still not force any lessons on the human. It simply allows the human to learn and choose. It never insists or convinces. It simply gives a firm base of grace and available understanding upon which the human can choose to discover and learn from it or not. It does help you believe in a larger reality if you choose to. So if you're looking for a way to believe in a larger reality, this layer is the one that helps you, if you choose to. Once you choose to, it will begin coloring everything that you experience, coloring it with a background color of grace and divine understanding, to the extent that you allow it to. Always, free will is respected first and foremost. And so you see, you are driving it. You have to ask and allow it for it to work for you. The wisdom of the divine feminine layer. This is the pure compassion layer, the mother energy layer. Love, compassion, beauty, softness, birth and death, intuition, shamanic understanding and power. It is one of the most powerful, strongest energies, and it is the compassion for all humanity. For example, we saw it activated in people during the Chilean mine shaft saga, where 33 trapped miners were miraculously saved by global cooperation and prayer. We also saw it activated during 9/11, during the tsunami that rocked Asia, and during several other recent disasters. People dropped their pettiness and focused on being together to help each other. Imagine what the world would look like if all humans had this activated all the time. Well, this layer calls for balance, a balance that is sacred. It brings common sense solutions and peace instead of war and conflict. As humanity today, both men and women have neglected this energy, and this neglect has allowed them to separate and to wage wars of all sorts, from the household to the global battlefield. Now listen, this layer or this energy is not available to women only. No. All humans have it. All of them. It's not just for women. And all humans need to honor it for it to awaken within them, which means women don't get a free ride or an easy ride just because they are female. Like the others, it lies dormant until the human genuinely calls for it, allows it, and honors it. The Creator God layer. God is the creative energy of the universe and beyond. It is quantum and has no beginning or end, and it is everything. And for that reason, I prefer to call it source energy or just creator. But for this video, we shall continue using the word God just because it's shorter. God in you is literal. It is not a figure of speech. This is also another layer that goes deeper into the statement made in his image and likeness. You and creator are one. You are source energy. You are source energy incarnate in flesh. I mean, that doesn't sound so crazy when you think about it. What if source energy wanted to incarnate as flesh? I mean, what else? How would you want it to incarnate? Why not as you? The energy held by this layer is the energy of God, of Prime Creator, of Source. The same energy used to create stars and universes. It can literally move mountains, stop natural catastrophes, extend life for thousands of years, and much more. But it stays dormant until you believe it, until you give it permission and validity, and until you ask it, until you intend something with it. This layer is home. Now, here is a puzzle for you. Did Hitler also have God within? Yes, he did. But a human has free will to ignore it. And that is the point of a free will planet. Did God punish Hitler? I can't say for sure, but my answer, no. Again, that is the point of free will. All are loved unconditionally. However, Hitler is one personality amongst many that are carried by Hitler's soul, or Hitler's higher self, in which case that soul and all humanity as a whole learned from that experience and used it to advance humanity. Plus, the karmic engine within his soul group experienced the negative and positive cause-effect outcomes of that life and used them to evolve into a new understanding. Great. So now we have all the layers done. But like we said, we talk of them as layers, but they are not really layers. You know, like a layer cake is. Not at all. All these layers are mixed up like a quantum multi-dimensional soup. They are not countable. They are better thought of as an interactive, timeless quantum soup. So resist the urge to separate them, to count them, to name them, or to treat them as linear objects. We say layers just for the sake of being able to talk of them in 3D. Let's now consider what DNA has to do with consciousness. DNA is consciousness and beyond. Human consciousness is not controlled by the brain or the genes. It is controlled by the subconsciousness of Akashic experience. First, understand that consciousness is transcendent to all phenomena and is therefore not bound to or caused by neurological activity in a nervous system. Consciousness is also transcendent to space and time, and because of this, it is through your consciousness that you can travel beyond the constraints of body and mind. DNA literally gives the instructions that keeps the human going. DNA is the human information field itself. DNA is the seat of the feeling within that tells us that we are part of something bigger, a sense of divinity. DNA is the 100 trillion parts working as one, and this creates the singularity that is your individuality, the awareness of a me, the awareness of who you are, what you intend and desire, and of your spirituality. From head to toe, your DNA is the same. Police can identify you with DNA from absolutely any part of your body, any part, even your saliva. DNA acts as one, as a singular identity. It acts in unison, the 100 trillion parts working as one. They have awareness, an awareness at soul level of the entire human being and his or her structure. Let's ask ourselves a question. Why do we say consciousness isn't generated by the brain? Well, the brain is a biological organ in the skull, and this organ contains synapse. You know, synapse is a structure that permits a nerve cell to pass an electric or a chemical signal to another nerve cell. The brain and the nervous system are for 3D navigation and survival. They are tools for survival and navigation in the physical environment. At best, they generate survival consciousness. But considering everything we have talked of and know to be human now, can you imagine this amazing but relatively simple structure, the brain, being capable of creating human consciousness? I mean, sometimes when you wake up, your brain doesn't even know what to eat for breakfast. It's a marvelous tool, don't get me wrong, it's amazing, but it is a tool with a narrow 3D purpose. In fact, let's consider an example where DNA literally takes over from the brain to save your life. Imagine you're crossing the street and suddenly a speeding car appears out of nowhere. Instantly, in a way that you cannot explain, your awareness heightens, time seems to slow down, and you know exactly what to do in an instant. And you do it, using a strange new power that you cannot explain and have never experienced before, and you save yourself. Looking back, you are stunned. You might even be in shock. Where did you get the superhuman intelligence, speed, and strength to jump like that? How did you know the exact way to move and how to shape your body so that the car doesn't touch you? It seemed to all have happened without you actually thinking and deciding. Many people have experienced something like this, and it wasn't the brain that saved them or gave them the extra juice or slowed down the perception of time. The brain is too slow for that, too unequipped for that. It is the DNA event that jumped in. Even as the car approached, DNA, in a quantum way beyond space and time, had perceived the entire event and all its probabilities and combination of probable outcomes. And DNA had activated the entire body down to the intestines to move as one precisely in an amazingly fast and we might even say miraculous way. DNA activated the whole system and beyond. You perceived with inner senses even before your eyes perceived. You completed the move in the non-physical even before the body subsequently started the move and then completed it. That, my friend, is DNA. It forms your field of consciousness. It is not just chemical. Which brings us to the notion that DNA creates the aura and the Merkaba. The aura is the mist created by the DNA, multidimensional and electromagnetic events. The event creates a mist which we see as the aura. All the records of your past, present, and future are therefore held in your auric field right now. You are holographic in nature. You are literally light being projected onto a quantum medium, a matrix, and this forms the illusion of physicality. Are you starting to see how this all works? Remember the DNA phantom effect that we saw earlier, whereby DNA was proven to be able to organize and structure light? It proved that DNA structures energy and light. DNA therefore patterns the quantum energy of your experience. It puts together not only your physical body, but because of the vibration of your aura and DNA, it also patterns your environment and experiences through quantum energy. Now, the Merkaba. Merkaba is Hebrew for to ride. The Merkaba is 8 meters wide around the body. Your entire being rides within it. When activated, it becomes an interdimensional travel vehicle and much more. It allows for multidimensional travel through quantum entanglement. To do so, it first activates quantum entanglement so that you are everywhere and nowhere at the same time. This is basically a balanced, controlled, phasic displacement of dimensionality. It then projects onto a new location of choice so that you appear there. Remember, you are simply an information field that is patterning energy through quantum entanglement into your current physical form. If you can move that information elsewhere, the body will appear there. Quantum entanglement is a basic principle of teleportation, of faster than light space travel, of so-called UFO ships vanishing and appearing somewhere else, and it is the principle behind the stories we read of shamans and other people who seem to be able to bilocate or to travel in non-physical ways. The most famous example of which is probably the story of Elijah in the Bible. And now let's see what DNA has to do with Gaia, the Earth's consciousness. DNA and Gaia are intertwined, entangled quantumly via Gaia's energy grids and through magnetics. They speak to each other back and forth all the time, through the magnetic fields and through quantum entanglement between Gaia's energy grids and DNA energies. This marriage is what evolves humanity and the planet itself. We will cover this in more detail in the Gaia video episode. And finally, let us consider what DNA activation is all about. What is DNA activation? DNA is a main component of evolution, including spiritual evolution. In evolution, everything is involved. The brain, all the cells of the body, plus all the non-physical aspects of the self. So, it is both physical and non-physical. Evolution is very much about activating dormant aspects of DNA. It is literally about progressive awakening. In other words, evolution is ascension, and ascension involves reawakening aspects that descended and shut down. The fall in consciousness, the rise back up again. During the rise back up again, the creature does learn and invent and contribute new energies and new understandings that were not there before, but the ladder of ascension already exists. You awaken to what was always there. And yes, you awaken to what was there, and you also participate and create new things that weren't there even as you climb the ladder that was already there. But the basic driver of evolution is awakening to what was always there. That's the template. For example, advanced spiritual concepts are dormant in the DNA, awaiting consciousness to reach harmony with them so that they can be realized. Scientific advancements and inventions are also in the DNA, awaiting human consciousness to reach harmony with them so that they can be realized. DNA knows where humanity is on the evolutionary scheme of things, and DNA holds templates that activate at the right time and place. Some of these templates await hundreds of thousands of years before they can activate. Some will be activating this year. And so evolution is a function of DNA activation coupled with Gaia's response to provide whatever is needed in that newly activated energy. For example, many technological advancements in our history happened in a way whereby an age or an era came and suddenly a bunch of people were spontaneously coming up with inventions that fit that particular era. When humanity's consciousness is ready for new science, Gaia brings it forward from the time capsules. It is a system. Here are some more examples. Power-controlled flight was discovered in the USA by the Wright brothers and in France by Alberto Santos Dumont, literally within a week of each other, yet they were not in communication. Radio was discovered in the USA by Nikola Tesla and in Italy by Guglielmo Marconi, again within a few weeks of each other, yet they were not in communication. The industrialization of America saw a bunch of young men of the very rare caliber who changed America. They were all alive at the same time as if by plan. These include Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, Henry Ford. The personal computing era also saw a number of giants born at the same time to change the planet, including Bob Love, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Steve Wozniak. Going back a few thousand years, the domestication of crops and animals also happened globally at a certain age in the world, as if it was coordinated. So what's coming next? The quantum era is coming. The multi-dimensional era is coming. And as soon as our consciousness is ready, we shall see a burst of innovations, of instruments, of energy generation, of transport, and much more. that work at the quantum or multi-dimensional level. It will redefine life, biology, the cosmos, who we are, what our physics is, and just about everything that we know. It will be a far, far greater disruption of "this is normal" than the information age ever was. Imagine being able to have a conversation with any form of quantum energy, to communicate with a tree or a rock, which is impossible in 3D, but normal in multidimensionality. Imagine being able to see the vast number of multidimensional life forms all around us that we currently don't see, and to realize that we are never really alone. Imagine being able to alter the magnetics of the molecular structure of an object and make it massless. Imagine travel using quantum entanglement instantly from point A to B. Imagine the joining of the galactic community that has been invisible to most of us all this time. Imagine having such a close and conscious relationship with Gaia on a scientific and spiritual level that we can consciously control what the Earth does in cooperation with Gaia. Imagine having energy sources that do not rely on fossil fuels and can be generated at any point of space-time, which means anyone has infinite free energy. This is just a small set of examples of what the quantum age will bring. Free energy is one of the biggest ones that is waiting to hatch, and hatch soon, as our consciousness calls forth for it. Free energy that is not fossil fuel based, that does not pollute. The idea that we can extract an infinite amount of clean energy from a single centimeter of space to power just about everything we need to power over an entire year is just amazing. Do you know what it changes? It changes everything. Another one is the replacement of the centralized financial system with something else. Because we can all see that the idea of banking and centralized currencies has gone beyond its usefulness. It is something from an old era. It is a dinosaur that is now crashing, falling, cracking, and really hurting us. It's squeezing people's lives. The financial system just ain't working. And so, just like the gasoline-powered vehicle, which is also a dinosaur, it's on its final leg. It's on its way out. In summary, imagine solving the most serious problems we have on Earth today, the ones that seem solutionless today. Solutions to climate, disease, financial, food, and other issues that seem unsolvable today. That is all part of DNA activation. Human beings haven't as yet evolved into their true bodies that we will have at 90 to 100% DNA efficiency. We are currently at just 30%, and hence our current bodies reflect that 30% DNA activation. Imagine how the body will be at 80%, or at 50%, or let's get crazy, at 90 or 100%. A human is capable of 100% DNA efficiency. At 90% efficiency, DNA creates a consciousness that is one with the universe. Imagine what that kind of consciousness can do. Not a consciousness that knows it is one with the universe, but a consciousness that is one, consciously one with the universe. Imagine the power of that kind of activation, the ability to manipulate matter, love and oneness, unity with all things. Interesting, isn't it? Could it be possible that the masters who walked the earth, such as Jesus and so on, were simply awakened, DNA activated, but in all other ways they are exactly like us, in every other way? DNA activation brings with it a strong connection with the Creator, the embodiment of peace and love so strong that others can feel it. It brings about miraculous capabilities such as healing and manipulation of matter. It allows a human to know deep things, such as knowing about the solar system, the galaxy, the cycles of the universe, all without necessarily conducting laboratory experiments to tell you these things. DNA efficiency is about information, not chemistry. Literally, filled with light. And as we know, Light is information. Imagine a world where humans have an awakened DNA. What a planet! Utopia is not just a dream, it is a memory we have of places where we have done this before and succeeded. And it is a desire to achieve it again. Peace and no more war. Yes, there will still be differences. There will always be differences. But there is an understanding then that will allow for differences without resorting to war. An understanding that is high-minded. And an understanding that the planet and all humanity is one, entangled, and we must therefore cooperate with Gaia and the laws of nature. That is an ascended planet. And don't discount the energy of activated DNA. Listen to this. The energy of one person with a high DNA activation can literally keep the earth from shaking in a particular area. It can literally move a mountain. One enlightened person has the same power as thousands and thousands of unenlightened people. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all else will be given to you. The kingdom of God is within. And so it is worthwhile remembering that DNA is always listening to the human, awaiting instructions, awaiting the I am commands, awaiting human intent. When we do not speak with DNA or with our bodies and our beingness, DNA just sits there and does its default thing. It just runs the same old programs over and over again. However, when we speak to it, it wakes up and does some radically amazing thing. The layers know what to do. Simply ask, let go and let God. The DNA itself will know exactly how to perform what it is that you asked of it. The personality has no idea what should be done or how, so leave it out of the job. Don't even bother, try and guess. DNA knows. Your job is simply to ask, to intend, to give instructions. Now, I also find it interesting that when Jesus was asked how he does his miracles, he replied that, I quote, "These things and more shall you do. Anything is possible for him who believes." Personally, I believe the reason why these promises are so is because we all have the same capabilities within us, within our DNA. DNA and quantum energy. A new understanding of your body. Let us now put together the human body in light of our new understanding about the quantum composition of the body and DNA. Quantum science tells us that the human body is made up of 7 billion atoms per person. Each atom is made of subatomic particles. These subatomic particles are actually energy in different configurations, and energy pulses in and out of existence may be around 50 billion times per second, roughly speaking. I mean, who's counting, right? Now, the atom is 99.999999% space. The protons, the electrons, and the neutrons, and so on, that the physical aspect of the atom, those are only 0.0000001% of the atom. So the atom is mostly empty space. In fact, it is almost all empty space. Okay? Well, it's not empty space, but let's call it empty. There is something going on in that emptiness. Okay? So now, why do things feel solid? Things feel solid precisely because of the charges that are the subatomic particles. We say that the electron is a negative charge, and then we say that the nucleus is a positive charge. Well, there's more than that going on. There are about 6 different forces operating in an atom, okay, including gravitational forces, electromagnetic forces, and so on. But these charges are the ones that attract and repel each other and give the physical person or thing a feeling of solidity. That's why things feel solid. Not because they are made of solid stuff, but because the charges are interacting. Okay, so this energy that is the atomic world flashes in and out of existence 50 billion times a second, and each time it comes back, it reconstructs itself in the shape that we see with our eyes. And it does so because it obeys the information field. Energy organizes itself around information fields such as human intent and so on. And so we have a new definition of physicality as something that is mostly space, something that is pulsing in and out of existence rapidly, but something that is organized to maintain a particular shape and feeling based on information. DNA science tells us that DNA has the ability to structure and order light, to order and structure energy. DNA is an information field that can manipulate energy. And so now we can redefine what we think of as the physical body. The body is a quantum field, flashing in and out of multi-dimensional existence so rapidly that we don't even notice that it's happening. It flashes 50 billion times per second, which means you or your body has 50 billion chances per second to change. Meaning if you change the information field, the next flash will rearrange itself according to the new information. DNA is that information, and it structures the energy into the thing that you now call the body. But it is extremely fluid. It's fluid because the information is fluid. Basically, DNA is asking human intent the following question: Boss, shall we do the same or different? It asks this question 50 billion times per second. Usually, the human answers, well, let's do the same. And so, the same body is reconstructed. The same physical experiences, and the world seems so solid and unchangeable because of that answer. Not because it is that way, but because the information field hasn't changed. But the instant the human answers, hey, let's do it different this time, it changes the field. It changes everything. That is the miraculous power of the human. Consciousness has physics. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the amazing world of DNA, of who you are, grand you are, loved you are, immensely bestowed and endowed with powers beyond your imagination you are. Use them. Don't allow society and conditioning to tell you that you are less than you really are. And so it is.
Alright, if you like that, here are 7 more things for you. Number 1, download the free Awaken Your Avatar report. Number 2, take free trials of our self and world mastery courses. 3, download the free A Happy Pocket Full of Money illustrated book. 4, help me make more videos faster by supporting me on Patreon, and I'll reward you with some very, very cool perks. 5, subscribe, comment, and share this video. 6, get our cool merchandise like t-shirts, hats, mugs, and book recommendations. 7, help translate these videos captions if you can. Thank you very much, and see you later.